County Council meetings now in session. The Honorable Christy Cox will give the invocation Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for the many blessings that you've bestowed on us, our health, our freedom, and our privilege to self-govern. I want to thank you for all of our men and women in uniform, both at the local, state, and national levels. And I thank you for our county staff and their families and the contributions they make to our county. I also want to thank our volunteers who give their time selflessly to make sure that our county runs well. I pray for each council member here tonight for guidance, wisdom, and discernment on the issues that we face. I pray that the truth would come out and that we base our decisions on the facts and that we set aside political agendas and personal interests, and that the work that we do here tonight would be honorable to you and in the best interest of the citizens of our county. I ask for your mercy and blessings on us all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business is oath of office for board commission members. As I call your name, if you would come forward, Darren Britton and Rodney Hicks. I didn't touch it. Did you bring one?
Yeah.
Oh, are these yours?
I do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state to exercise the duties of the office to which I have been appointed, and that I will, to the best of my ability, discharge the duties thereof, and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state and of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you.
Four. Gotten that oath a couple of times, huh? Thank you very much. Appreciate your service. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
All right, good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for service. Yes, sir. Thank you for
You
service.
want That's, yep. Okay. Right. Okay, under appearances, our first person is, actually, it was just mentioned as a representative from the Home Builders Association. Oh, just the other ones? Okay. Ken Olson to talk about the proposed moratorium, Fort Mill Bethel Townships. Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. My name is Kent Olson, 13 Marina Road, Lake
Very good.
Wiley.
Okay.
My company is Development Solutions Group. Thank you for the opportunity to get in front of y'all tonight.
Yes, sir.
I'm here humbly before you to hopefully enlighten you on the facts pertaining to our business and our relationship with the communities that we develop. I'm a local developer home builder that moved here in 1984. Built my first house in TKK in 1986. I've witnessed firsthand 4 recessions, which, by the way, slow down or stop development in a natural way that occurs in our business cycles. I've seen the area grow and enjoyed all the benefits the growth has afforded us, from professional sports teams to new retail shopping centers to new schools, expanded health care services, and most importantly, abundant job growth offered to all residents in our area. The actions that you are to consider, be it a study or a moratorium or combination of, will affect most everyone here in one form or another. Regardless of the length of time, these actions will cost people the opportunities to earn a living and have a negative effect on the local economy. I would argue it already has, as some realtors are now fielding calls over concerned buyers possibly backing out of lot purchase contracts fearing a moratorium. Employers, such as engineering firms, are also discussing the possibility that they will have to lay off workers if a moratorium is enacted. These are just a couple of examples brought to my attention in the past week. The obvious, framers, electricians, plumbers, painters, laborers, etc., will come from the home building industry. Those are the obvious. But then you'll have the service workers at lumber yards, nurseries, restaurants, and etc. that'll be affected in a negative way. I think all of you will agree that the thought of some government action taking away your paycheck, be it for a week, a month, or a year, is not a pleasant thought, especially just as our industry is now finally coming out from the effects of the Great Recession. I would humbly like to ask the council members, did you know that developers pay for the entire infrastructure in a new neighborhood and then give it to the local municipality? Did you know that we are required in most developments to engage an independent third-party engineering firm to do a costly traffic analysis to gauge the impacts the proposed development will have and then, of course, is required to make those proposed improvements to the immediate and surrounding areas? Did you know that we pay tap fees for water and sewer service? Did you know that every new home built equates to new jobs in the immediate area? Did you know that commercial and retail growth rely on new homes to justify their expansion to an area? They provide a high tax base, add retail shopping options, and are job creators. I would argue that no study is needed to tell us that we're growing. An expensive study that will come back and say that we need more infrastructure and a way to pay for it. Well, guess what? We have that now in place. The developers pay for everything but the surrounding major road improvements. And guess what? We have an excellent program to address that in our county, Pennies for Progress. Expanding this successful program, as well as fighting for our fair share of state road money, is where the focus should be, in my opinion. We've already addressed growth concerns in the county when last fall we dramatically reduced density in most of our residential classifications. I mean drastically reduced in the order of tens of thousands. We in the development of building community were dealt a big blow last year, but while not fully supportive of, we understood the concerns, as many of us are locals also. We are still trying to get our arms around the severity of those changes. Again, those affected tens of thousands of potential homes in the area. Many landowners don't even know their land values have been severely reduced. Rest assured, landlords appreciate it, knowing that apartment sites are now very scarce. They look forward to raising rates in the future. It is also a given that single-family housing will be more expensive based on reduced density. Tough on our future firemen, teachers, and public service workers who hope to live in the areas that they serve. At the end of the day, I feel we should not make a knee-jerk reaction by putting the brakes on the area's expansion we work so hard to create. Once everyone understands the reality that developers pay their own way, and some, that you have already dramatically reduced future density just last fall, that you don't want to impede owners' land use rights, that you have a future road needs program in place, I hope you will come to the conclusion that we are currently addressing the area's needs while protecting the area's characteristics that we all embrace. I certainly hope we can all agree that we do not want to take away people's ability to make a living or sell their land. We live in a very desirable area and should be proud of the fact others want to move here, just as most of us all did. We can continue the growth and success the area enjoys in a smart way. The best part is we're already doing it. Reducing density, done. We did it last fall in a big way. Get the developers to pay, done. They already do. We already do, and we'll gladly do going forward. Address future road needs, we started, but more is needed in this area. Someone wiser than me said the other day, they're considering putting the cast on the wrong leg, and I feel that is well said. I feel strongly that it is also immoral to simply close the gate behind us and exclude new residents for a day, week, a month, or a year. It kills jobs and sends a wrong message that we are exclusive and not open to others. Let's keep expanding our job opportunities, keep expanding our excellent school systems, keep expanding our health and shopping options. TKK, Fort Mill, and the Lake Wylie Chamber of Commerce do not support a moratorium. Let's join with them and tell the world that we are open for business. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, next person is Joe, is it Padilla? Did I say it correctly?
I'm actually not Joe Padilla.
Oh, okay.
If I could represent him tonight.
Sure.
He got called away to something else.
Sure.
So, my name is actually Rob Nanfeld, and I'm representing.
Can you spell that last?
N is in Nancy, A-N-F-E-L-T. And I reside at 4127 Wright Avenue in Charlotte. I'm here representing the Real Estate and Building Industry Coalition, which is also called REBIC. We represent the realtors, home builders, commercial brokers, commercial developers, and apartment association in several counties in the Charlotte region. The primary reason for my appearance tonight stems from recent reports we've been hearing about the potential for a building moratorium in northern York County. This is concerning to us because past history indicates moratoria often result in greater housing costs and actually for a time compound existing traffic issues. Let me say, much to the chagrin of some on the other side of the state line, your governor has done a masterful job of utilizing incentives to bring jobs to South Carolina. Most recently, with the announced relocations of Lash Group to Fort Mill, bringing 1,200 existing jobs with the idea of creating another 1,000 jobs, and LPL Financial also bringing 1,200 jobs with the hope to grow another 2,000 more. I asked the council, where are these people going to live if they don't live here in York County? If they are forced to purchase new homes in surrounding counties, it would seem any existing traffic problems would get worse by virtue of the fact their respective commutes would be longer. I noticed later on in tonight's agenda there are a couple of discussions planned in the fee in lieu of tax agreement matters that could result in bringing even more employees to the county. As one who believes strongly in positive economic growth, I think this is a great development. And my hat's off to you for finding creative ways of growing your county's employment base. But again, these folks have to live somewhere. And employers are going to want to know that folks are going to be able to live by now and in the future. While I'm on the topic of economic development, let me throw out a few statistics. According to the National Association of Home Builders, single-family homes create, when a single-family home is built, 3 jobs are created every time. For multifamily, each rental unit creates 1 job. If you add in the tangential lawyers, realtors, other people that are involved in the process, it's a ripple effect through the economy, very positive ripple effect. With these additional revenues, should there not be a moratorium over time, those additional revenues, tax-based, will be created to provide the infrastructure that you need for the future. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I look forward to hearing your discussion about these and other matters. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next person is Mark Nix. Welcome. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can hand it to Michael and he can pass it around.
First, I want to thank you for having me. It's almost like my second home. I think I have several family members who actually went to Winthrop and graduated from Winthrop. In fact, my sister graduated from Winthrop in '91 and stayed in Rock Hill. She actually lives with her husband and her family in Lake Ridge, and her daughter goes to Gold Hill Elementary. So,
You're not related to Bobby Walker, are you?
no. Is he wanted somewhere else?
No, just
Probably.
inside joke.
I know. But no, so I mean, I'm happy to be here. And I had to say this because my niece told me I had to go back and mention her name, so I did, so she knows she's out there. But first, I want to congratulate each of you. Because an economist once told me that, basically what a house is where a job goes to sleep at night. And y'all have done a very good job bringing in new business into your county and into your area, which is good. That's how a county grows. That's important. That's the lifeblood, is make sure there are jobs out there. So I'm actually very proud of you for that. But then I started reading the newspaper the last couple of weeks on some of the things on a moratorium and an APFO. And some of the errors that just kind of stand out to me. I just wanted to mention a couple of them. One was, I saw one neighborhood HOA that said, we're tired of building, paying for the infrastructure. We're tired of building those streets and those subdivisions. We're tired of paying for the water and sewer lines. And I think what you just heard is that's incorrect. A developer that comes into a subdivision does all of that. They have engineered studies. They pay for the roads. In fact, not only do they pay for the roads, they actually build them to standards set by the county.
And once they're inspected by the county, they're provided bonds back to the county to make sure they continue to be in the same position and the same good wear and tear that they have from the time they started. So the county holds that bond as well. The infrastructure. Every developer you see in this audience tonight has paid the infrastructure costs. They have tap fees. They pay for all the water and sewer. They pay for the sidewalks. They actually go back turning lanes. Anything that goes with in a subdivision is paid for by the developer. And I always say paid for by the developer, but you know who really pays for it? Is the homeowner. The homeowner is the one who's getting the actual cost. I still remember, this is back in the early 90s, I had a friend. It was my first time I bought my house. My first house cost $56,500, 1,100 square foot right down in Columbia. I was proud to death, had a picture of it. Had another friend who's a little brighter than I am. He actually started PayPal, which I thought was the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. But he showed me a picture of his house. It was a 1,400 square foot ranch house in Palo Alto, California. He only paid $1.4 million over the asking price of the house. Basically the same house. There weren't gold nails in that house. It's the regulatory costs that are added to that cost of the house. That's what we see. The house is a house. You got shingles, you got wood, you got nails, but all the regulatory costs are added on. Right now what you're seeing in Rock Hill is you have an issue with affordability. We have something called a price out index. So for every $1,000 added to the price of the house, so what it tells you is how many people are priced out, how many families, workforce families, that can't live there. You're one of the highest in the state right now, that over 1,100 families are priced out for every $1,000 added to the price. The highest, one of the highest in the state. This was saying something compared to the, I can tell you Beaufort's pretty high at times in Charleston County, but you're higher than both of those. So when we look at what's happening with the moratorium, there's a lot of different issues that go with it. And part of those, what we see is, we look at the rentals, I think it was just mentioned a second ago. What happens when you have supply? And right now, your county is below what we consider a good supply of housing. 6 months, a little over 6 months is considered a good supply. You're about 5.5 months. So there is demand for a house, but not enough supply going to it. So what does that mean? That means prices rise. I think I read one of the realty reports say you've already seen an increase of about 5% over the last couple of months in the price of a house. That's just the price of the house. We haven't even seen what's going to do with rental prices. Because when you can't live there, what's going to happen? You're going to have to travel to other places, or you're going to pay a higher price to live where you want to live. And that's a shame. Now, I mentioned my sister a few minutes ago. She's a teacher. Her husband works for a bank, so they make a good living. But they're in the same boat as everyone else. They're trying to raise their family in the area that they want to live in. We don't need to force them out of their area. We don't need to force them into North Carolina. Another issue I read in the paper was, it's a time for housing to pay for it. I think I heard one county official say, it costs us for every house that's being built, it costs this county for every apartment. Now, the handout I just gave you, and we're working on one for York County right now, but I picked up one from, that we just did in Greenville last year, just to give you an idea. I'll give you some of the amounts. This is for 2014. The Greenville area pulled about 3,492 permits, single-family permits. And just in retrospect, last year, York County did about 1,800. So the numbers are going to be comparable, not going to be the same. When we get a full report, we'll give it to you. But let's look at it. So basically, local income generated, just on those 3,400 houses in Greenville, that's over $522.8 million. Taxes, local fees to the government, over $53.5 million, first year. This is the first year. Jobs created, you heard in a second, almost 3 full-time jobs were created. Over almost 7,800 jobs were created because of those new houses. I also heard earlier that said, someone goes, we don't need new houses, we need more grocery stores. And I think what you're gonna hear from some of our commercial developers is what happens. You're not getting the grocery store unless you have what? The rooftops to go with it. You're not gonna get the Walmarts. They go with where the houses are. Let's go back, and you go back and look at it, that's just the first year. Recurring figures every year after that for residential, over $111 million in local income, almost $30 million in taxable income for your local county and communities, and an additional 2,200 jobs. Then you look on the next page, the multifamily. I mean, it's staggering. So another $107 million on the first year alone, $15.1 million in additional tax revenues first year alone, and 1,500 jobs. After that, then you're talking another 28 million. 8 million going back for local revenues. And if you look on your third page, just look at the cost. When we look at the study, and I have a copy of the study we're going to provide to you when it's done in the next couple of weeks, to give you an idea. When we look at the studies, we look at everything. When you start hearing about studies that say a house doesn't pay for itself, unfortunately, it doesn't pay for itself because it's paid for everything else. We go back and look at everything from paying for police, new teachers, new schools, infrastructure costs, debt, interest on that debt. It's all included in this study. What you're seeing right now happen in Greenville, this is all with the cost coming back to you. So stopping that is a major impact on what you're providing. If you pulled out bonds in the last couple of years, those bonds that you have are based on one thing, the growth of your community. That's what's paying for those bonds. A couple of years ago in Dorchester County, they tried an APFO and did a moratorium while they were trying to look at facilities. They had to stop it within 30 days. Reason being, they found out they couldn't pay for their bonds because that's what was paying for them, was the growth in that area. So if you go back on the last page, you can see, what does it mean for your county? For Greenville County, this is what it meant. In a 10-year period, a surplus of over $166 million in local revenues for taxes. Over a 15-year period for that new construction, over $221 million. That's a surplus. That's not cost. That's taking out all the other costs, all the other expenditures. That's taking out building the new schools. That's taking out new teachers. That's taking out new firemen. That's taking out new policemen. So those people that come back and tell you that growth doesn't pay for itself or residential doesn't pay for itself, ask them to see the study. I see it all the time. I've been doing this for 15 years, not only in South Carolina, but nationally. And we can poke holes in that. A house isn't just a house. People live in the house. There's other expenditures that go into it. So as we talked about before, I think right now you have options. I can tell you what I found out in the state of South Carolina when I meet with other county councils. I see your number one option is your futures, getting together with other developers and other interested parties and have a vision of what's going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years. That's where your value is. Where your infrastructure goes, where you put it, that's where your growth is going to go. It's that easy. Stopping construction, even the talk of a moratorium. I've spoken to 2 people who said they've had deals fall through. They're selling their land, and it fell through because people didn't want to sell because they didn't know what a moratorium would do to them. That has active effects on every single person. So if you're asking me what a solution is, the solution is pretty easy. Growth is great for a county. It's great for its citizens. Good growth is when it comes from actually good planning of where that growth is going to be and how to take place. It's there. So you're looking at saying, well, why not let's stop for an APFO? It makes no sense. That's what we're doing already. You've seen developers already put together. They're paying for all the infrastructure in place. They are following through what your vision plan was 10 years ago, where you wanted to put the infrastructure. Right now, what we need to be looking at is where we're going to be in 10 years from now. And that's what a vision statement's doing, is looking how we're going to incentivize where growth's going to be in the future. And I hope you come together and join with your community and look at how your county is going to grow in 10 and 15 years. And that's the answer to this. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Mark. Next speaker is the Honorable Representative Ralph Norman. Give a little bit of a state perspective.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, Ralph.
Yes, sir.
907 Maple Hill Lane. Before I do this, Bill, would you stand up? I want to tell you, I called Bill a month ago. I had a constituent who was concerned about a
He's
tax,
going to be nice.
about a
Don't sweat
tax
it.
card not being online in York County. And they said Lancaster has it, Mecklenburg County has it. Why can't we? Because they physically had to go down to the courthouse and get the tax card. I called Bill, and by the way, he returns every phone call within the day. He emailed me later and said, Ralph, we worked it out. Give us time to do get the people in line to do it. And I just want to thank you publicly because you really did a great job on that. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to just say a few words. And I know the job, I know it's a tough job that you face. I face it on a state level. But let me just give you a perspective from my viewpoint. And we're small contractors, small developers. We have been in a 7-year drought, basically, not just for residential, but for commercial statewide. We are so fortunate here in York County that we're just now coming out of the slump. And I'm against government putting mandates on private enterprise. We're the ones that sign the notes. We're the ones that borrow the money. Just like Mark and Kent said, the developer now puts in everything, from roads, streets, detention ponds, and we, for the most part, maintain them. But I wanted to give you one look at what I think is, if you do this moratorium, it's going to stop the commercial growth. Residential is the backbone of commercial growth. People, one lady told me, she said, I thought, basically she said, I thought people parachuted in to shop. No, they drive in. A good example is Baxter. Springs did a great job of putting the residential in, and the commercial followed. And any developer here, I see Brian and others here, will tell you how rooftops are the key to commercial. And I want to just give you a good example of and look on the second page. We just finished a Hampton Inn behind the Lowe's in Fort Mill. To get started, before we rented the first room, the impact fee, $42,966. Permit fees, $55,449. Came to $98,415. That's before we opened the first room. That's the right to do business in Fort Mill. The tax on the raw land that year was $7,750. We had a total fees paid to the city and went into the coffers of $106,165. The tax bill for that Hampton Inn in 2016 will be in excess of $270,000 that we'll pay. $176,000 will go to the Fort Mill School District to educate our children. Hospitality tax, 2%, which would be $64,000. The little shopping center out in front of it, last 2015, we paid $66,772. $43,000 went to the school district. So it's a hand in glove. Residential supports this. The second thing I wanted to look on the demographics on page 2. Any commercial developer goes on, or any commercial client goes on demographics. And what I printed out for you, we use any, whether it's a Carrabba's restaurant, a Ruby Tuesdays, anything says, what is your households on a 1, 3, and a 5 mile radius? And I put, and these are 2015, in a 1 mile, Gold Hill, I-77 is 1486. And look, I've highlighted, and I took 2, Tyvola at I-77 and Tyvola and Fairview. If you compare the two on Gold Hill and I-77, 1486 versus 3,403. Go on the 3 mile, 11,832. Look at Tyvola I-77, 31,576. If you go to a 5 mile radius, 33,127. Tyvola and I-77, 72,000. Folks, that's density, but that's shoppers for the small shops that all of you see in South Charlotte. And I went on and put 160 in Gold Hill. If you do a 1 mile, these are households. 1 mile is 2,629, as opposed to Tyvola 3,403. And you go down the list, but my point is, it's not that dense where it is now. Look at Highway 49 and 274. And I spoke to a group of Lake Wiley residents. They were saying how bad the traffic was and households. Well, look at it. 1 mile radius, you've got 1,088 house homes in a 1 mile radius. You've got 4,529 in a 3 mile. You've only got 11,060 in a 5 mile. The traffic counts on 274 today is not but 20,400. It's a 4-lane road. Tyvola is a 4-lane road. So my point is, if you can't get to residential, forget the commercial growth. It's not coming. And that's what I hope that y'all will take into account because it's real. It's not a fake. These demographics are real. And I've got the traffic counts for you on each road too. So you'll see. And, we were talking to Chad and Christy. I said, one thing that maybe, if you really want to look at getting a group together, is upping the standards. Rock Hill did that. I, as a developer, shouldn't be able to put in a vinyl box that won't stand the test of time. What they did, they raised the slab off. You had to go 24 inches, roof pitches. Yeah, I think the minimum was a 7 and 12. You had to, do a mixture of brick. That's money, but it's just not pulling the plug on every residential project that's coming down the pipe. And these things take time. From the time you put a contract on a piece of land, from the time you get permits, it's 3 years or more, 2 to 3 years. So that's what I'd ask you to consider. And housing, like Mark and others have said, pays for itself. I cringe when people say we don't want density. Well, density is what nobody wants an acre of land in a split level as was in the 60s. The thing Springs is doing, 55 and older, they don't put a strain on the school system. So I would have you look at consider that. And on the adequate public facilities ordinance, the only thing you're going to find is people upset about roads. That's our job in the Columbia, to try to come up with a solution on that. That's real. But I hadn't had one subdivision that they said, we don't have enough water to supply you. We don't have enough sewage to supply. We don't have enough, of course, stormwater detention, we maintain that anyway. So I would just ask you to consider that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate it. Next part, excuse me, is the public forum session. On this now, you signed up right when you came to the door. I can only give you 2 minutes, so I don't want to be rude, but we only allow 30, so I can only give you 2 minutes each. So the first person that signed up is David, is that Tibbles?
Mr. Chairman, Council.
Yes, sir.
David Tibbles, Regent Parkway in Fort Mill is the address. I ask you guys to imagine back in June 2015, and you guys have an opportunity to go build a house. It's actually going to be a lake house, and you're going to you found this perfect lot, and you hire an architect. An architect pulls together plans, and he comes back, and it's going to be $10,000. You say, okay, I'm going to wait for my bonus. I'm going to go ahead and get that pulled together come Christmas time. I now release my architect to go do my plans. And now I'm ready to submit my plans, and all of a sudden, the rules change. I represent a client, Freshwater Industries, and they contracted their property with Meritage Homes back in June of 2015. They have spent not $10,000, 20 times that amount, over $200,000, in working through with the planning staff, working on the rezoning that makes sense, a community to move forward inside this York County jurisdiction. I simply ask that you take into consideration a significant investment that has taken place with my customer, not my client, but my customer in Meritage Homes, and the impact it is to my client for being under contract now for almost 9 months and questioning whether they can move forward or not with regards to the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next person is, I can't read your last name, is that Marty Mathis? Yes. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm Marty Mathis. I'm a realtor from York County. I've been in the business since 1996 full-time. I'm also a local citizen. I live right up at 110 North Congress Street. This proposed moratorium is already showing effect in my business just based on developers who are afraid to sign on the bottom line. I have sellers who are going to sell who are now waiting to hear about the moratorium because they said, well, my house will be worth more. So a proposed moratorium actually is going to give a negative effect when it comes to what a person's house is actually worth versus what they will get from it. Because when the moratorium is lifted, then that the house they just purchased is now worth a little less. So we could end up right back where we were 7 years ago, and we're just coming out of that. I'm also, I hate to say that Mr. Nix is incorrect. We do not have a 5-month inventory of homes. We have less than a month's inventory of homes that are under $250,000. from $250,000 to $500,000, we have approximately 3 to 4 months worth of inventory. I have 3 buyers I just put into short-term rentals because we do not have inventory. Inventory is vital to my livelihood and to the livelihoods of so many others. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yes, ma'am, appreciate it. Next person's Tom Cutts. Did I say it correctly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Tom Cutts with Meritage Homes, 11605 North Community House Boulevard in Charlotte. I just wanted to describe, we have our case up before you tonight. We made some changes to the rezoning case out there on Regent Parkway by the Laura Ashley Building. We've removed from 67 lots down to 60. Basically, what we have done is we have taken and clustered and pinched everything into the inside of the development and preserved all the open space around. We were able to take it from a 50-foot buffer down to a 100-foot buffer on the one side in question, a 100-foot buffer in the other side, and 150 to 250 feet on the southern property line there. We did remove the houses in this area right here that were backing up to these houses right here. In comparison to this development, you can see where there is no common open space. We've taken ours and we brought it into the middle and created all the open space on the exterior. If there's any questions tonight, I'll be out in the lobby and answer any questions that need be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Next person's initial M, then is that Shearholtz? M. Shearholtz? Nope, nobody? Okay. Next person's Gary Griffith.
I'm Gary Griffith from 529 Cuxhaven Court, Fort Mill, South Carolina. I would like to request the York County Council to consider including a provision into the plat approval for 1535, which would allow Meritage at their discretion one of the following options defined below without having to resubmit the plat or seek additional approval from the council in order to address two of the homeowners' current concerns. Option 1 is to relocate parcel 1 and 2 to be placed between parcels 26, 49, and 50 if no issues are encountered with the pond. Option 2, if option 1 is not viable, is to shift the parcels 1, 2, and 3 approximately 25 feet to the southeast, increasing the minimal buffer between the two homes remaining on the golf course. There would be no reduction in the overall space, and these options could benefit the two remaining homes which sit on the front center of the tee box on the Regent Park Golfway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next person is Adam Painter. You're good? Okay. Next person is, well, it looks like you might have marked your name out, Rick Pug. Okay. Next person's Bobby. What? Hang on. Are you Rick? No. Nope.
Steve McCray.
Oh, sorry.
Robert Walker, 5710 Williamson Road, out in the hopefully still going to be beautiful Bethesda community, Rock Hill address. First off, I want to thank y'all, as I always do, for your service. I want to thank you all, those that I saw at York County Day recently. Thank you for taking your time to join us down there. And hadn't seen much of y'all this year, so I thought I would show up. I'm glad I came for another reason.
Thank you.
But I wanted to,
Please
ask again.
excuse Mr. Williams.
I wanted to ask again for the multipurpose agritourism event center task force to hopefully be formed in the near future. And I will be talking with you more about that. I think Mr. Herndon and I, my eyesight's not as good as it used to be, and I just noticed the rezoning sign today on McConnell's Highway. And to me, the sign, I think, said 321. So I thought I was coming tonight just to say hello and remind you about the agritourism. But I'm glad I'm here too, and I'll probably, if you're going to move forward on this first reading of rezoning, which I would also question whether the sign says 321, therein lies the problem to begin with. But if you are going to move forward with discussing this first reading, Mr. Wayne Herndon and I guess will wait and talk in opposition of that rezoning at that time. But I would like for you to look in to see if there's some discrepancy on the date. On the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Next person's Mary Williams. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Council. How are you all doing?
How are you
Move
doing?
this closer to me.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things I noticed when I'm trying to watch you on the live webcast, since I haven't been able to make it the last couple of months, is that unless people speak right into this, you can't hear a
Can't
single
hear it.
word. So just some food for thought and going forward. Okay, you can start my 2 minutes. I'm Mary Williams. I'm 313 Squirrel
Thank you
Lane,
for
Lake
reminding
Wiley,
her.
South Carolina. I'm the vice chair for the Lake Wiley Civic Association. I'm also on our little Oakton Subdivision Homeowners Association. I'm the treasurer for our HOA. And first and foremost, I'm a concerned citizen of Lake Wiley. And I'm speaking from a residential perspective because I've got to say that we've had some wonderful mom and pop businesses come in and some big box businesses come in that we are very appreciative of. The one thing I wanted to talk about was the Lake Ridge Apartments that are going in right across the street from the entrance to my subdivision. 222 homes that are going in, that are going to create, they have created some devastation to our little country road that it was lined with old trees, and now they came 2 or so weeks ago. They were interesting because they clear-cutted behind all of the trees, and so we really couldn't see what was going on. And then one day, all the trees along Montgomery Road were gone, and you see this ugly devastation. So I've seen this also happening, and this could have been easily avoided. And this all goes into the planning of the development, giving Audra and her team the tools to be able to make better judgment calls on what is going to look right within that setting. And the same thing is going on Bonham Road. And what I've heard people say over and over again tonight, and you guys got here, you're stuck with the mess. I've heard you guys say that before because 10 years ago, people weren't doing the things that are being requested tonight. And that is the 10 to 15-year development plan that one of the developers talked about. It's got to be thoughtful. We need to put the brakes on. And thanks for the moratorium. And thanks for your time. And also, thanks for your service. I think you guys are doing a great job considering you have real jobs besides this. So thank
Mary.
you.
Appreciate it. Perfect timing. Wayne Herndon. Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, I'm Wayne Herndon, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening then. The parcel that is being considered for rezoning was a part of our original farm that we bought in 1947. We farmed it all those years. Parents passed away, and at some point that the school district superintendent came to me and said, we need an elementary school right here, right now. As soon as the bond referendum, and of course that's been 17 years ago and nothing has ever developed. So that's the reason this is available to you. You are aware then that following this, some years later, we decided, my sisters and I, 6 of them, decided that we need to settle up the estate, and so we did, after good negotiating a long time with the county and with some of you who might have been on the board at that time, reluctantly rezoned it so that we could build houses on it, and it is a nice development. But I have a farm just across the road, 322 from this one, and I would like to see this come back to part of an agriculture area then. Gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity. Please give me consideration.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Okay, next item is public hearings. Consider third reading and public hearing of case number 1536, request to rezone property from UD, BD3, BD, RUD, and AGC to PD at 2280 Deerfield Drive. This is the old baseball Knight Stadium, thank you, I went blank on the name. Knight Stadium area. Anybody here want to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Tracy Dodson. I'm with Lincoln Harris, here as a representative of the developer, and I'm just here to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, yeah, this is just public hearing. We just listen to what you say.
Well, we have, actually, I'll just add that we've come back, this is our second public hearing, just came back. We had one minor adjustment in that to add gasoline sales in one development area. And the real intent of that is to hopefully future incorporate an adjacent parcel that currently has gas on it, but we would do another use to that, preferably office or hotel. So we'll hopefully in the long run bring that parcel in as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Anybody else want to speak in favor? Anybody opposed?
Move to close.
Got a motion to close. We have a second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, hold a public hearing and consider amending and third reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement and infrastructure finance agreement by and between York County and Atlas Copco Compressors LLC, Mining Rock Excavation and Construction LLC, and Goldenrod Incorporated, formerly identified as Project Eagle, with respect to certain economic development property in the county, whereby such property will be subject to certain payments in lieu of taxes, and such companies and or corporations will receive certain infrastructure credits in respect of investment in related infrastructure and other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Martina Schierholz. I'm with Atlas Copco in Rock Hill.
Yes, ma'am.
Responsible for the production there, for the factory. And I just wanted to take the opportunity and thank you for your support. And we're really happy that it all worked out to have our development done in Rock Hill.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate what you're doing.
Is there any questions for me?
Yeah, just public hearing. We don't ask questions.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else here in favor? Okay, anybody opposed?
Move to close.
Got a motion to close, to have a discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Have a new motion.
Approve.
Second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, hold a public hearing and consider amending and third reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and among York County and or Lincoln Blazers Coating USA and Beacon Waterford LLC and or its affiliates, whereby York County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the sponsor and sponsor affiliate and providing for payment by the sponsor and sponsor affiliate of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes, providing for the allocation of fees in lieu of taxes payable under the agreement for the establishment of a multi-county industrial business park and other matters related thereto. Anybody want to speak in favor? Yes, sir. Sorry, you were just a shadow out there earlier when
Okay.
I didn't mean to misidentify you.
That's all right. Mr. Pugh will be up next.
Okay.
I'm Steve McCray. I'm a partner of K&L Gates. My mailing address is P.O. Box 11429, Rock Hill, 9731. My firm represents Ehrlichon, Balsers Coating USA, Inc. The ultimate parent of that company is Ehrlichon, registered in Liechtenstein, and most of its operations in Germany, but they're worldwide. Gary Mann, who is the project manager of this matter, regrets that he could not be here tonight. He asked me to stand in his place to explain a little bit about this project. Ehrlichon Balsers Coating USA has been a good corporate citizen of York County for many years. It currently has an operation in Tech Park, and in fact, council approved a fee lot agreement for an expansion of that project several years ago. This is an expansion at a new site in Waterford, in a building that was built by Rock Hill Economic Development Corporation, Beacon Partners, or its subsidiary. Beacon Waterford is the affiliate sponsor. We'll be leasing the building to Ehrlichon for its automotive division, coatings in that particular industrial area. There will be a $15 million investment, and there will be 18 new full-time employees. Some also will be moved from the existing facility, but this project will involve 18 new full-time employees at good salaries. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else want to speak in favor? Anybody opposed?
Move to close.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee agreement by and between York County and Harrell Industries Incorporated to provide for a fee in lieu of taxes, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
I'm Rick Pugh, president of Harrell Industries. We're a manufacturing firm. We've been located in York County since 1988. We're looking to expand onto a second site in East York Industrial Park. We're going to expand onto this site, and we're going to bring in a minimum of 9, maybe 10 new employees within the next 5 years.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Rick. Anybody else want to speak in favor? Anybody opposed? Have a motion to close?
Move to close. Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Need a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, rezone action, consider third reading, case number 1535, request to rezone property from RD1 and BD3 to RD2 at Regent Parkway in the Fort Mill community.
Move to approve with the following condition. The project shall be developed in accordance with the site plan submitted March 7, 2016 to the County Council. Major amendments to the approved site plan will have to be approved by council. Major amendments include but are not limited to changing the use from single-family to townhomes or multifamily residential, a reduction in open space, changing the location of open space, increasing the total number of units, reducing buffer widths, or eliminating or altering the cart path and walking path locations.
Is that it?
That's it.
We got a second?
Second.
Discussion.
This was
Mr. Johnson.
This was before council, and in the past, several council members have voted against this rezoning. I'm asking you to approve this rezoning tonight. One of the agreements that Meritage has made is their willingness to possibly relocate 2 of the lots, lots 1 and 2, to different areas. Some of the concerns that I've heard from council members about this was that lot sizes are significantly smaller than lot sizes in the area directly behind it, specifically Cuxhaven Court. I think what you would find is that Cuxhaven Court is an older neighborhood. It was built in a while ago, and what we have, the newer neighborhood, you're going to have a higher density, but what you're going to get is a over 40% common space area out of this. And that is a benefit to everyone who lives in that area who will have access to that common area space. This started with 87 homes, single-family homes. It is 60 single-family homes today. That's almost a reduction of a third. I would ask everyone to support this rezoning at third reading tonight.
Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
I'd just
Mr.
like to
Winkler.
say thank you to the developer and to the community and to Councilmember Johnson, because I know there's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of work put into this. And thank you for everyone being willing to get together and work on it, so.
Thanks, sir. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, consider second reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to an existing fee in lieu of tax agreement between York County and the Lash Group and Kingsley Number 9, so as to admit one new sponsor affiliate, to bifurcate the fee agreement as to the obligations of the existing affiliate sponsor, Kingsley Number 9 LLC, and the transferee as an additional sponsor affiliate, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item. Did you get that? Next item, let's see. Allison Woodruff to present an update on the litter control efforts in York County. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
I can't imagine that anyone can't hear me because I'm a very loud person, but I'm going to move this down just in case. Thank you. Are you one of them? This question I pose because none of us, I don't think, would consider ourselves litterers, but obviously there's a lot of litter in our county. This actually is in the city limits of York, on one of the main roads, the state road. But there are also other kinds of litter that we often don't consider, and the behavior we don't consider. The top left corner is the #1 source of litter in our county and in our state, and that is unsecured loads. It is haulers, they are residents who are taking things to the collection and recycling centers. They're not secured according to the ordinance, both state law and our county ordinance, while things can escape with wind, et cetera. Unfortunately, this top left corner is a county employee's vehicle, and what I want to speak with you all about is that we all join together and have strength in our opposition to litter. On the top right corner, you don't really think of this as littering, but this is still littering behavior. If you're in a public space, you don't really see it anymore, so you scoot it up under the chair, then it's not littering. You know, this is all about behavior and social norms. And so it may not be that you would throw it out the window, but you sure aren't gonna have a problem putting it under the seat somewhere for someone else to clean up. The bottom left corner is social expectation. You see this is a movie theater, there's a trash can, it's kind of difficult to see right here. Someone's not even gonna put that in there, they're gonna leave it because it's someone else's job. That's still littering. The broken window theory is a theory that litter begets litter, and litter begets other crimes. You see that this litter receptacle is full, but people continue to put stuff around it, as if somehow it being in the vicinity of a litter receptacle is okay. Again, this is very complex behavior. This is not something that you can look at and go, that's the so-and-so person who does that. There are lots of people who do that. And we were at a litter conference recently, and there were very few people in the room who said that they had never littered in their life or knowingly littered in their life. And that's really just it's a sad, sad world. The next part of our behavior for human beings, a lot of people think cigarette butts are not litter, that they decompose. And don't get me started on all of that, but there's a lot more to it, and they're not cotton filters anymore, they're plastic filters, so they just get into smaller pieces of plastic. Those are the same people who wouldn't throw anything out the window except for their cigarette butt. These are incorrect individual beliefs and varying feelings about litter based on the type or circumstance. There's an ick factor, and don't get me wrong, I have been in ick situations where I didn't want to pick something up. I carry gloves in my personal vehicle and my county vehicle to pick things up, but sometimes you don't have those on your person, and you see things that biologically might not be really nice. You have, I'm in a hurry. Well, somebody else is gonna get that. I'm in a hurry, I got 12 kids with me right now, I can't get it. It's not promoting positive disposal behavior. It's not necessary that they did it, but it's not positive disposal behavior. And we're trying to convince the residents and all of us, as county employees, county leadership, that we do have to model this kind of behavior. A social compact is something that we have with our citizens. You do your bit and I'll do mine. We have to show the residents that we're willing to do our part and we're asking them to do their part. A common thought process is that community members shouldn't litter, but when they do, it's the government's role to pick it up. And while that is the more sustainable way for our crews to do it and not just volunteers, we welcome volunteers and we want people to have a sense of community. So the public managers, business owners, and community leaders have a crucial role in demonstrating this reciprocity and positive disposal behavior. If they feel like that we, meaning the county, employees, leadership, aren't doing what we're supposed to, they're certainly not gonna wanna do anything about it, because they should care. One of the biggest problems we have, though, is a care of place and a sense of community problem. While we may love that green space up there and what's beyond it, the asphalt roadway, I can't really say that I have warm feelings about it, and I hate litter, but that's not what I feel about. People are passing through it. They don't have a sense of ownership about it. And that's compounded by the fact that a lot of people don't know if it's a state road, county road, who's responsible for it, and even we in this room don't necessarily know or understand that. But we need to make clear what our expectations are and engage the citizens into like mutual ownership. How do we create success in this prevention, law enforcement, and collection? I won't go over what we're already doing. We have proper ordinances and a commitment to a cleaner community through integration. I won't go through all these, I promise you. It's a lot of the same saying, but the state and the county laws essentially say that a person from a vehicle or otherwise, now dump, throw, dispose, toss, deposit, discharge, any kind of litter or solid waste on public or private land or waterways, including roads parked, except in authorized containers. It addresses the person who let that substance fall and what you should do. And again, one of my biggest things is the loads and covers thereon. All vehicles should be constructed, loaded, or covered to prevent dropping, escaping, and shifting. That's our biggest problem. What are we going to do about it? We'll talk about that in a minute. Of the 2,300 public roadways in York County, a lot of people do not understand this, and the general resident doesn't understand this, and I can appreciate that. 60% of the roads in this county are owned and maintained by South Carolina DOT. All the roads with the lines on them, the ones that we get the most complaints about, our office takes in, and all these calls, 95% of those are DOT roads. Because of that lack of clarity that I just talked about, the York County, you live in York County, we're gonna be the go-to office. You guys might get the call, sometimes the sheriff's office will get the call, but either way, York County and whatever that definition is to people, that's where it's gonna come, the calls are gonna come there, and the responsibility lies with us. We do not have the kind of budget that we need to successfully implement a litter prevention plan, but we're trying to do it anyway. We're just not doing it in a timely enough fashion because we don't have the budget to do it. Litter removal is always a hidden cost, almost always. Like, I'm clean community coordinator, what's that even mean? You know, Keep York County Beautiful, I'm litter prevention. What does DOT do? What do the towns do? But what they do, it is embedded inside. Collection and Recycling Office, we've been able to utilize CityWorks to track our cleanup data and direct operational costs. As of March 3rd this year, so of the 15-16 year, we've spent approximately $36,000 in labor, equipment, and supplies for the collection. There have been 136 requests and work orders entered for county and state roads to date. We still have the rest of the year, the fiscal year. Disposal cost for litter would be $48,800, which is, we don't get a separate bill for that. Almost all of that goes to our centers, and the bill comes out from that portion. Adopt a Highway volunteers clean 2-mile stretches of state roads. That is a DOT program. They provide the bags and they provide the pickup. However, the disposal comes through the county. Education and incentives are provided by Palmetto Pride. In terms of cleaning up state roads, unless it's an emergency hazard situation, that is their policy. They do not pick up on state roads. So then again, it comes back to York County, whoever York County is, and that's our office. In the 12 months, the York County Sheriff's Office issued 81 litter tickets, 65 warnings, and investigated 126 incidents. So we are trying really, really hard, is the point I'm trying to make here. The Sheriff's Office works on zero tolerance, illegal dumping issues and investigations, citations, tickets. They work with Palmetto Pride on grants and trainings. We're working on a training video with them that will be hopefully ready by the end of the month. The litter task force, we tried to do that when we lost interest in the local governments. and have a litter hotline. And they do things with hunters and help kids and educating in hunter safety classes to get information out about litter. Litter isn't just ugly, it's dangerous. And it goes back to that broken window theory that litter begets litter and other crimes. We've got, those top 2 pictures are carcass dumping in our county. The bottom 2 are not. The bottom left is fishing line that has cut through that, I think it was a goose. It's bone, it went all the way through its bone. It's fishing line. And then you see, it's obvious what happened to the turtle on the right. But it doesn't just affect us. Education, I will not go through all this because I know it's going to be boring to you, but our office does a whole lot with education and a whole lot with partnerships. Keep York County Beautiful, most of you know who we are. We're working on continuing to brand that group. They're volunteers. We have some volunteers here today from Keep York County Beautiful. We are a Keep America Beautiful affiliate. We offer many grants to any and everyone who wants to beautify the community. We have Adopt a Gateway Garden. We have scholarships, Adopt Your Spot, which is something we're going to hope to engage the business community in adopting their immediate area around their business if we provide the supplies for them to do so. And then Keep York County Beautiful, along with our office, has a Adopt a Highway stretch, and it's that 1 on 5, and it's rough. Unsecured loads, I've already said, are the #1 source of litter. The top left corner is just something I put out around Halloween about unsecured loads are scary. That picture on the right is one I saw at coming to work one morning. And I sat at the light and I went, what is that? And I went, oh, So I drove up and I went, so at the next light I took a picture best I could. I'm surprised it's not more blurry than it is. You see the back part of the truck doesn't even have a door, so it's not secured in any way. And this is obviously could be a health issue for someone. And we ended up, our office had to go back and pick up the 2x4s that they dumped, because we can't ticket these people. But if you look at just the landfill, 200 vehicles go there on average every day, and that's near our office. 22 of those are tractor trailers hauling our MSW, our household garbage. If each of these expelled 18 pieces of litter, as was witnessed from one truck the other day, this would mean 103,960 pieces of litter for just those 22 trucks. So I'm trying to show you how bad it can be. We've done a cigarette litter prevention grant. That was at Ebenezer Park, and so we have new receptacles out there. These are all the things that I think you'll probably find boring, but there are lots of events, and if you follow us on social media, you'll know about it, and you probably see it in our emails. But we do lots of things. They're all free. We don't charge. We provide prizes. We connect with the schools, with other municipalities. Those are some of the samples of signs and ads and flyers that we do. That left side is one of the reports from Great American Cleanup by one of our former board members who spends his retirement picking up litter and doesn't get paid. He just does it because it's the right thing to do. And that's another post that we made here on social media. Those are also some social media. River Sweep, I know everybody knows about River Sweep. We help with that. We are a primary partner in that every year. This is Great American Cleanup, and we're entering into that era now where we provide free cleanup supplies for residents, groups, businesses, anybody that wants them. That's a partnership in this picture between Keep York County Beautiful, the City of Rock Hill, and Rock Hill Clean and Green, and York County Collection and Recycling. We did Aspendale Road. It's a cut-through road that's a constant problem. We're probably going to do it again this year. Adequate tools and resources. This is another part of that circle that I showed, that all of these things have to work together. These are tangible things, but they're also monetary things. In solid waste collection and recycling, I think we offer adequate disposal options, consistent disposal options, which is important. We have the collection and recycling centers, landfill transfer station, and those other items. If someone wants to dispose of things properly, we give them every opportunity to. Those are some of the partnerships I already mentioned, and we do a lot of continuing education. Okay, so now for the biggie. You may or may not love me after this. This is what we propose to help change the way that our county looks, because honestly, right now, it looks pretty terrible. With continued population growth, and I swear this was not because of everybody talking about this stuff tonight, because I did not know that was, I did this way before the agenda was out. But it does strain the abatement efforts that we're already trying to do. If litter is reduced on a per capita basis, more people still tends to be more litter. So on the enforcement end, we already have the consistent enforcement of laws and ordinances. We want to encourage new attitudes towards littering crime amongst the public. It's not just a soft crime. I'm not saying that if there's a robbery going on, that someone should stop someone for litter instead of going to that call. But still, it is something important, and it affects our residents very much. We get so many calls for it, so people do care. I understand from a meeting with some sheriff's officers recently, they're already having staffing issues. So litter's not going to be a top priority, I wouldn't think right now, given the fact that they are short-staffed. But we've worked really well with the litter control folks there, and we would love to continue that. A plan for continued growth because of more population growth. Adequate tools and resources. Again, we have a lot of those things already. The sheriff's office and the solid waste collection and recycling office will produce an officer training video. And that's for all the new officers coming in to help encourage, again, that we're all on board here to prevent litter. Our office is going to request a litter collection foreman, vehicle, and needed cleanup and safety supplies in the upcoming budget. This person would work most likely Tuesday through Saturday, and they will work with alternate labor source to clean up our roads. Now, the cleanup is obviously not the answer. It's only a portion of the answer. Prevention and enforcement is another part, but to keep our roads as clean as possible and to prevent more litter accumulating on top of the other litter, we feel like this is crucial because we do not have a dedicated labor source for that now. We're only doing it on an as-we-can basis, and we have things on the list from August that we still haven't addressed, of last year. We're also requesting funding for new tarping systems for our vehicles. Obviously, we can't do that for all the other municipalities that come through, but something that's actually super effective. We have automated tarping systems on ours now. The wind comes through left to right or right to left, and you wouldn't believe the amount of litter that will come out of the sides. The proposal we're trying to suggest has tight tarping, like it would be very, very difficult for something to escape. We've got to be role models for everyone else. If we're not doing it right, how do we expect anyone else to? And then plan for continued growth. Education and awareness, we'll continue doing that. We'd love to know of your ideas for new partnerships. Enforcing the public policy through codes, we would need and we would like to have court buy-in for probation and parole to utilize offenders to do litter pickups. And that litter control foreman would help facilitate that, as would the officers there, but it would be like an assign a road kind of thing, because the law states that with every litter crime that occurs, that person is supposed to do a litter cleanup or some other kind of community service sentence. But our office has no way to enforce something like that. We've tried it before, and it didn't work well because the people wouldn't show up on Saturdays. And if it went through probation and parole and we have them on board with us, that's more bodies to keep more things clean, and it's helping enforce the law that is in existence. The next one is a big question mark, I realize, the enforcement of road ownership and maintenance, meaning we're cleaning up state-owned roads. I don't know that anything can change. I realize that the state says they don't have the money to do constant cleanup, and that's neither do the cities or towns, but we don't either. You guys know that. So if we're gonna keep take on that burden, we wanna do it well, and that's why we're asking for this extra funding. Again, we have a crucial role in leading the process of influencing positive disposal behavior. And that is the Catawba River at the top. There was so much litter and debris that it looked like an island you could walk out on. And at the bottom is the way we want it to look. So, thank you so much. Anybody have questions or?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Roddy.
Part of this presentation was a result of several phone calls that I received a while back addressing the litter problem that we're starting to see escalate throughout the county. And I know I mentioned it to you guys a while back to kind of take note and notice some of these things throughout your respective your respective districts. And it's been an ongoing effort, and I've worked with Allison several times with her programs and been out to several events. And one thing I know to hold true is that responsible people continue to be responsible, irresponsible people continue to be irresponsible. And sometimes the education part of what they do is not going to get through to some people in some groups. And so what I I mentioned to her today in our conversation is trying to get the respective municipalities on board to be a reminder in their towns and communities about this problem. That's a growing problem, because this tends to have an effect on economic development when businesses come to town, scout in York County, and they see certain aspects of our county not being taken care of with regards to litter. And we all can do a better part, or do our part in pitching in and cleaning up. You know, we only can expect volunteers to do so much. We can only expect that free labor source to be available at certain times. But I think long-term, we need to address what can we do as a staff, personnel. We don't have someone that's assigned to go out on our county staff to assist with picking up litter. Obviously we have the departments that go out and educate, but they're not the ones assigned to going out and hitting certain target areas to clean up. And so down the road, I think it'll be a good topic for us to entertain. How can we position ourselves or make available staff to go out? We don't want to take departments and other personnel and assign them. We need to have some designated personnel that kind of is involved in the day-to-day cleanup part. Because one thing's for sure, the more people that we get here, the more trash we're going to create, and the more trash that's probably going to end up on the side of roads. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, we're starting to see an escalation, and definitely in some of our back roads to where there's not a lot of homes, there's not a lot of traffic. You know, people tend to throw things out the window, and uncovered transport is an issue, but I do think some people will continue to do it, not thinking, you know, this makes my community look bad. So at some point, I think we need to address some type of personnel. We don't need to go out and create a whole new department, but we need to have some type of personnel available to go out, because we can only count on volunteer groups to do so much. We can only count on neighbors to do so much. But at some point, we're going to have to put some boots on the ground staff-wise to be able to address this issue. Otherwise, it's going to get to the point that we won't be able to control it. We'll be always playing catch-up, and I think now's the time to really start looking at it, since we're starting to see an uptick in litter throughout the county. So just kind of, and we're getting into budget season coming up here real soon, so I think that's one thing we can keep in mind. And if staff can come up with a way to your department with a person that can help us assist, and even working with the solicitor's office, Kevin Bracken, if someone's has a fine or been convicted or something that can be designated to do litter pickup. You know, we want to make sure that you do utilize all the tools that's in the law that will help us address it. But we still can't only depend on offenders to solve this problem. We hope that they don't litter, but in the case that they do, we do need to be prepared to send people out to address it. And the only way we can do it is by looking at some staffing option here in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Roddy. Mr. Winkler.
Two things very quickly. I've started getting a lot more calls lately, people complaining, but I did have one gentleman who lives in my district who called wanting to know what he could do, and I did ask him to reach out to you, so I hope he has.
Excellent. That's what we're hoping to engage.
He was wanting to know what kind of programs there were and that type of thing, so I told him to reach out to you. I also just want to say thank you to David and to staff, because I did get pictures and contact from one of our citizens up in the Henry's Knob area recently, and trash problems. Went out and picked up by hand what they could, and I believe picked up 11 tons a couple of days later of tires and stuff that had been dumped. So thank y'all, because it was real quick in getting some of that done, and you know, but who knows how long some of that stuff had even been there.
That's true.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Next person's Eric Rickett, Public Works Director, to provide an update on glass recycling changes in York County.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Allison again. They do, that whole department, collection and recycling, they do a great job, all of Public Works, in cleaning up these illegal dumps and getting out there and preventing litter. So I'd just like to thank them again, and all the volunteers as well. I'm going to go on to another subject with collection and recycling, and that's to update you on a change to our recycling program regarding glass collection. As you know, we have 16 centers located throughout the county, and any resident can bring recyclables and either separated or mixed, in a bag, bin, and however they bring it. Recent trends, however, have forced us to evaluate our collection of glass. What has happened is we have been, with an insufficient number of inmates, we have been sending most of our mixed recycling to a third-party vendor for processing. With the lack of inmates, we can't run our processing center, so therefore it goes to them. In doing this, they've recently informed us that they will no longer accept glass in mixed recyclables beginning March 1st. That's what they said about a month ago. So the question is why, in terms of glass? Why are they no longer taking glass? Depleted glass markets. And then glass in processing equipment, it damages the equipment, it runs through, it's like sandpaper. It contaminates other recyclable materials. And then it ultimately gets broken, ends up landfilled. And nobody wants that. It's detrimental to any recycling program. It's also important to recognize it's not a local problem. This is nationwide. Glass recycling is on a shift now, and it just needs to be addressed. We've looked into other vendors. It's all basically the same. Other large vendors are not accepting glass, or they're too far away for us to consider. So we had two options. We could stop accepting glass at all at our recycling centers. That's probably not the most desirable thing to do. We're already accepting separated glass. People can bring in their already separated glass, either by color, and we can recycle that. We still currently have a market for that. So we don't want to stop taking all glass. So option 2 was to allow them to bring in separated glass, but not allow it in the mixed recyclables. When you bring a bag or a bin full of all your mixed recyclables, we're going to require the glass be separated from that. And we plan on doing this as long as the stable markets exist for the separated material. So once we reviewed all this, we met with the vendor who gave us the March 1st deadline, asked for an extension to allow us to develop and implement a plan for educating the public. And they agreed, and they extended it to April 15th. So we decided that we will no longer start allowing mixed glass or glass in our mixed recycling starting April 4th, and that will give us time to ensure that our stockpiled material does not contain the glass by the 15th. So quickly, our plan in implementing this, 1, update you today. 2, meet with all staff, our staff on Wednesday. Our centers are closed, as you know, so we'll meet with our attendants and the rest of our staff, update them on what's going on. And then March 10th, Thursday, there will be banners at all centers. Attendants will hand out flyers to residents. We'll have a press release. Social media will be updated. And we will also have a hotline set up describing exactly what's going on. That hotline number will be on the flyer handed out, and it will be published in the press release. And then ongoing, we'll continue to educate everybody and provide bins and reusable bag distributions. Go from there. Any questions about that?
Questions for Eric? Yes, sir, Mr. Williams.
I just got one comment, Eric. I appreciate the memo that you wrote. It was so well written that you didn't have to get up there and stand up and present all that. However, I'm glad that you did. As part of it is that we need to educate the public. Hopefully, this is the first step, and those media outlets that now watch us live online, I hope they will pick that up and put it out, because that is going to be the most important thing of this change, is educating the public.
Thank you. That was my hope as well. So.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next is consider committing to the Carolina Thread Trail Program for use of a designated portion of the County Catawba River property for purposes of the trail easement in favor of the Nation Ford Land Trust, with public access for a minimum of 25 years for the construction and use of approximately 3,600 feet of natural surface trail, subject to such terms and conditions as will be contained in a contract to be presented to council at an upcoming meeting. Carrie, are you here? Oh, there you are. Well, do we have any concern? Well, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
I did have one question.
Yes, sir, Mr. I guess
The way it's listed, it says use only. I assume that we're not going to that includes maintenance, we're not gonna have to maintain it, or is that something we're gonna be expected to do, and is there a plan if it is?
The Carolina Thread Trail would be responsible for maintaining.
And
Yes,
for me,
sir,
I'd
Mr.
just
Winkler.
like to say, I'm glad to see public access listed on here, because that's something I've talked about every time we've done something with some of this, is making sure we have public access for some of it. So I'm glad to see we're going to allow the public to use it, so.
Well, I'm excited about it. I think it's a good opportunity.
What happens at the end of 25 years?
I
Oh,
think
it
we
gets
need
cut
to
off?
probably
Or
have an
renew
option
it,
to
hopefully.
remove.
Okay.
Hopefully,
And how many counties, and I know it's into North Carolina too, right? Is that correct?
I'll,
There's a bump.
Jen, how many counties does the
13,
trail go through?
13, I think.
15 counties, 3 of them in South Carolina.
And this is Janet Steele from Nation Land Trust, and we're working with them on this project. So
This will come before council again once the contract's been,
that is my
we'll have
understanding.
to
Yes.
vote again.
Right. It says in there to be presented to council.
I just want to make sure it's another vote.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
what's
well-
driving this now, there's a pending grant that they need to know that this is something that we want to do, that we want to grant the access, but obviously, the final terms of the contract would need to come before y'all. The land will need to be in the county's name and not in the commission's name, and that's something we've still got to work on, and that, of course, will be coming to you shortly.
Any other questions for Kerry? Thank you, Kerry. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next item, council to consider first reading of an ordinance to amend the code of the County of York, South Carolina, Chapter 30, Section 30.09E, in order to limit recommendations for appointees to the York County Natural Gas Board to 3 consecutive terms and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Yes, sir, Mr. Williams.
I think I've read a lot about this. I hesitate to change something just that's, I don't see a reason to change it. We limit terms on the rest of the boards. I do understand that we don't control all the appointees on this board, but that's true with the Catawba Mental Health Board and the COG and several other boards that we do. I would just, if we were going to consider, if we were going to consider lifting it on one, I think we should consider lifting it on all. I think, I've read the emails and I'm certain I'm in the minority, but just wanted to express my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Henderson.
Yes, I was just wanting to point out that this is definitely a horse of a different color. And with this being a state mandated situation, and we do have very limited control access, or what, there's a lot of things that we're limited drastically concerning things like this. And I think, being that we are looking at some of our own ordinances and correcting some possible oversights from the past as far as boards and commissions, this is how this came about. I just wish the state would take a look at some of their situations. Now, somebody said earlier tonight that you might as well expect that as much as you can expect them to finally get the road situation correct and vote on something. Well, maybe so, but at least in principle, I think this will make the county or cause the county to have considerably better representation, and it's a compromise because you have folks that are on the gas board that's been there. My Lord, I mean, it's unlimited. I mean, they've been there forever. And, folks, all I can say is this in some way will help to be able to end some of the inequality and the disparity gap there. So hopefully this will get the attention of our state delegation, and maybe they will act upon this and start actually consider some term limits themselves for boards such as this, because after a while you get complacent. In some cases, we know some people go bad, but the complacency is what I'm mostly concerned about. So I feel like that we got to end the inequality. So I hope this will, I hope that I'll have the support of the council on this.
Any other comments? Mr. Roddy?
I would be a little hesitant to want to extend the term limits. It's not like we're having problems finding people to serve on these boards. If we were in a deficiency of applicants each time this seat comes open, and it makes it harder to put people on the board, I could see extending the term because of that shortfall, but we don't have a shortfall in applicants who wish to serve on this board. And it's been some talks about even putting the cart before the horse, that if we do extend the terms on leaving the current person that's in the seat, just allowing them to continue to serve. I don't think that's right. So I won't support extending it because of that reason. If we're going to extend the term, we should open the pool back up and open the nomination process back up, not automatic just because current board members want to continue to serve. But my main point is, if this was a board that we couldn't fill readily once the terms come up, because we all have vacancies on boards that we're able to appoint locally, and we're having hard times putting people in those places because it's just not, let's face it, these boards and commissions don't have all the bells and whistles and frills and get a lot of notoriety of it. So it's hard to fill some board seats. But in this case, the Natural Gas Board, it's one of those boards that people want to put their time in, want to show their talents with. And so having said that, I can't support extending the term limits because we do have people in line waiting and wishing to serve on this board. So for that reason alone, I won't support extending the terms.
Mr. Winkler.
Couple of quick comments, and I saw Councilman Johnson adjust his microphone, so I know he's probably going to dress as well, but.
The only time I touch it.
Oh, no, it's not now.
On you to do it. For me, when this became before the committee, I was not for extending the term limits. I was for keeping all of our boards and commissions the same, but in talking to some of the board members, even representatives of York County Natural Gas, that is maybe a slightly more specialized board than some of the other things that we appoint people to. And with one of the things that was brought up was being able to have someone serve long enough to maybe work their way into a chairman's position or a leadership position of the board. Hard to do in 6 years when everyone else is serving 20 or 30. I would not consent to the term being any more than 3, but I did consent to that in the committee, and I do support it because of that reason. But I support it, and also in the fact that we have multiple applications for this one seat right now, and they will, at least my understanding is, all of them will be looked at when this ordinance is decided, one way or the other. Then all applicants will be looked at.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Henderson, and then we'll wrap it up.
This is first reading. I will remind everyone of that. This seems a little premature. But this came before the Finance Operations. We voted it out unanimously. We did it on the grounds that if you are serving on the York County Natural Gas Board currently, there are no term limits unless you serve at the will of the county council, unless we appoint you, and then you have a 6-year term limit. There has not been, in any recent memory, anyone who held a chair or vice chair position on the York County Natural Gas Board that was appointed by the county. And the reason is you can't serve long enough to get into one of those positions. 9 years may not improve it, but it certainly is much better than the alternative. And I do want to reiterate what Mr. Winkler said. There are numerous people who have applied for this job, and this job is not going to be a guaranteed to any one person. And the committee will evaluate all applicants and will certainly send to council, who can reject it anytime they want, anyone who comes out of finance and operations.
Just one more. I want to respond to Mr. Roddy, considering what he had just said. But, I don't know if this council remembers. I believe many of you do. It was about 8 months ago that I first brought this up, and it kind of stirred the pot a little bit. But, I think based upon all the other items that have come before us, and we had bigger fish to fry, we have taken care of those other issues, and we did prioritize our list. So, yeah, we are a little late getting to it, but it needed to be done.
Just, yes, sir.
Round two?
Yeah, I really don't want us to extend this any further, but that was something I meant to say earlier. One, we may need to look at our process, because although it was 8 months ago when it was brought up the first time, this is the first time that anybody else on council that's not on the Finance Operation Committee has had to express their opinion. So that's what I was doing. It probably would be a good idea to look at that at some point to make sure that it doesn't have to take this long. But
Well, let's wrap it up by just saying that this was just to kind of try to fix a little inequity where all the other members served almost a lifetime, and we were limiting our person serving to just 6 years. So just to try to balance it a little bit for the knowledge and term of service. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
no.
Did you get it? Council to consider the approval of STV's engineering contract amendment number 2 in the not-to-exceed amount of $59,518.03 for a Pennies 3 program project, US 21, North South Carolina 51, Springfield Parkway to North Carolina State Line.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
I do have.
Yes, Ms. Cox.
One of the things that I want to make sure, and this is something that the Pennies Committee is looking at, is the process for approving any increases and ensuring that we are staying on budget as to what was approved in the referendum under the Pennies. It's my understanding from talking with Patrick Hamilton, that who's our program manager for Pennies, that this amendment does not at all put us in a situation where we are going to exceed any budgetary, and I see them standing out, which is why I'm making this notation. I want to make sure it'd be nice, and then I wouldn't have to say this if that information was included in our packet. We are still on budget, and we are not looking to exceed that. Those are the kinds of things that I think processes-wise, we could make sure that's included in this, easier way to track.
Okay, and I appreciate the good points, and that's one reason I formed the Pennies Committee, because we need to, it's a great program, but we need to get it reeled in as far as the time it takes to do things, and then the overages for the extended time period. So we need to keep the focus where we're going right now. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no. Next item, council to consider a contract amendment with Cumming Construction in the amount of $803,250 for program management for the new county administration building.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no. Next item, council to consider approving a contract with Stevens and Wilson Architects for design services for the new county administration building in the amount of $967,271.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no. Next, did you get that? Yes. Okay, and next item is in my zone, so I'd request that somebody make a motion for this, for me. Rezone action, consider first reading for case number 1601 to rezone 24 acres from UD to RD2 with conditions at 320 Glendora Drive and Hampton Ridge Road in the Rock Hill community.
Move to approve.
Per condition noted, if you don't mind, sir.
Per conditions noted. The chairman's request.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Next item, rezone. Case number 1602 to rezone from AGC to RUD1 at Highway 322 and Herndon Farm Road in the Rock Hill community.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, consider first reading of a major amendment to the Braden Plan Development, case number 1603, Highway 160 in the Fort Mill community.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
I'm gonna.
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson.
Normally, this would be something that would seem fairly easy, but based on some of the emails I've seen, I'm going to make some comments. when this was approved by council with the old tree ordinance. If you have been to this neighborhood, I believe there are 40-foot lot lines, and you have approximately you have up to 16 inches worth of trees sitting in a 40-foot lot line. I drove out there the other day and looked at some of the houses that have that, and that's just simply not sustainable. That is not, they're going to end up, neighbor's going to cut down his tree, they're going to take down their own trees out there, which defeats the entire purpose of what we're doing. To the developers, I applaud them. They went out and they're moving these trees. They've worked out a mitigation plan in which this is going to, they'll move them out to street trees, and they are going to take care of the maintenance of that, not the county. And it's just a better overall plan, but it is certainly something that, this is a problem here, but this is a problem with our overall ordinance as it relates to trees. If you're going to have a smaller lot size, you can't mandate that the entire yard be trees. So we need to go back and change our ordinance. We missed that when we first did it, I believe, and so I think we need to fix this. I understand the concerns that this went to the Zoning Board of Appeals first. I think, based on talking with staff, and I think you've all seen those results, that this probably should have never been in front of the ZBA. It should have gone back to planning in the beginning, and that is what it did at the end, and was done correctly. And while you may not like the process, the fact that it went to the ZBA, was rejected, and then went to the Planning Commission, this is the right decision. If you've driven through this neighborhood, this is the right call for fixing this issue, so.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd like to add, it's not the old tree ordinance, it's the tree ordinance that we have, which is a concern that I had. But when I went, the two different sections of it, this was the trees were based on, this was a wooded lot, which is to encourage you to save trees by requiring caliper inches. And what they've done is they've come in and requested as if it was not a wooded lot, and the trees, with the exception of one case, are the same number, except for they want to plant them smaller and have them grow in there. So eventually it will be the same number, because I had that exact concern when I read it at first. There was the one section, it drops, instead of having 3 trees, instead of having 4 trees, you got to have 3. I can live that, but that was the concern that I had, was it was not an old ordinance, it was the existing one, and it was a wooded lot, and we have to be careful about granting exceptions, but that's because it ended up being clear cut. I think that's what caused the problem.
And
Yes, sir, Mr.
one quick comment. I was at that appeals meeting when that was brought up, and I believe the board did deny it, but I think they denied it because they felt like it should have been before us in the first place. Not that they disagreed with it necessarily. The feedback that I heard sitting there in the audience was they felt like that it should have come before us. Not faulting the developer, they just felt like it was in the wrong, being heard by the wrong audience.
Audra, can you speak to that?
Ms. Cox.
Unfortunately, I was not at the meeting, and when I went to listen to the tape, the proceedings were not recorded, so I have to rely on Councilman Winkler's recollection of what occurred that night. But from my understanding, yes, that there was a concern that it really wasn't proper to do it by variance. It really should be done by a major amendment to the PD.
And who made the determination? I mean, is it solely to the applicant to decide which place they go? Because I mean, I can see an issue, and I spoke with my ZBA representative about this request, and apparently he doesn't have a concern with this issue actually going forward as is, but I guess I have a concern about it. Seems like we're getting 2 bites at the apple, and what, did we miss something by allowing it to go this route, or are we, would there have been a benefit had they gotten the ZBA approval? How do we stop the going back and forth, because we already don't charging us, admin fees in order to take care of it, and we're causing duplicative, duplicative work having to be done by our staff.
technically at the staff level, we really couldn't stop someone from submitting a legal application. I mean, they legally can ask for a variance. We can encourage or recommend a different route, but if it's a legal application, we are obligated to take it and present it to whatever board that they're requesting. And we do run into this. We have these issues. This isn't the only place. It's just part of the process. We have an issue of someone could appeal an administrative decision, be denied that appeal, and they could come back and ask to rezone the property, which would cure the defect as well.
What would be, I guess this is what I'm getting at, what would be the incentive to do that? Because, I mean, these folks are familiar with the process, which is just, is there an incentive to do it that route?
The only incentive I could think of is maybe they thought it would be quicker to go through the ZBA instead of going through the Planning Commission, going through the council, and doing 3 readings.
You good? Any other comments? Could somebody have the IT department check her mic next? Okay. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider an emergency temporary dwelling permit request 412 Double Eagle Trace.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, request for direction from council on revising the county ordinances regarding emergency temporary dwellings. Do you want to speak up, Audra?
This issue has come up somewhat in relation to the matter that was just before you for that emergency temporary dwelling. My understanding is...
Standing up at the podium.
Oh, sure.
You sound like you're in an echo chamber or something.
For the record, Audra Miller, Planning Director. This issue has come up before you because of the issue that was on the agenda, the item right before this. Is my understanding that the emergency temporary dwelling ordinance was done at the request of a previous council. Staff feels compelled to bring before you the problems we are having with this ordinance. Once people become ingrained in their temporary dwelling, we have extreme difficulty in removing them. We have one that's been in violation since June. The Thurmans, obviously, as we outlined in that memo, we had a problem with that because they did not follow the process. We're kind of stuck on what we can do, and we wound up being sort of evictors from someone's own property. So we are coming to you tonight for council to see if you would be amenable to us coming back with some suggested revisions to this ordinance. And what I'm specifically thinking about is limiting it to 60 days for a true emergency, not allowing it for medical reasons, because what do I do at the end of 6 months or a year if the person you're taking care of still needs medical assistance, or if they are terminal, they haven't died at the end of the year, there's just not much I can do on that issue. So I would recommend that we limit this to 60 days, and it'd be for a true emergency, to just give a person some time, give them that 60 days to find permanent shelter while they are rebuilding their house or whatever they choose to do. So since it was a council requested ordinance, I wanted to come back and ask if you would be amenable to us presenting some revisions.
So you're saying going from a 6-month period to a 2-month period with
60
no
days.
extension? With no 6-month extension, because that was the history of the past. Mr. Winkler.
I was going to say, I would be open to that because I've questioned in the past whether or not some of our emergency permits were really emergencies, so.
Yes, sir, Mr. Williams.
All I would say, I would like for you to know that had you come with the Thurman and asked my support for you to do what you've been very patient with them, had you asked for your support to not be so patient, I would have gladly given it to you. I do think that it sounds like we may as well consider rescinding it altogether if it's just going down to 60 days. It was done because of the economy. If we still have sympathy for that, I think the way it works is fine. To drop it down to 60 days seems like it would just be just enough window to keep the problems that you have continuing to occur. But I'm definitely willing to look at whatever we need to do to support you.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes, I've got mixed emotions about this, and I feel like that the economy still is an issue to some degree for some people. And, you know, I hear and see these horror stories where folks are, for whatever reason, you know, in some cases, having to live off the grid, so to speak, and then they get thrown in jail. You know, I'm not for one to be so quick to do something like that. I'm willing to, I would hope that we would continue to give our people, our citizens, which I believe is a constitutional issue, to be honest with you, that where we're to uphold even at this level, at all levels for the private citizen. So I believe that in a case like this, you give the citizen the benefit of the doubt, even though we may want to kind of kick somebody to the curb and we might want to judge somebody because of, you know, what we think may be happening or not happening. I think that we should be very liberal with this and open and giving our citizens the benefit of the doubt. So I cannot support this.
Any other comments? Mr. Roddy?
Real quick, I just want to make a comment. You know, we see these temporary dwelling permits or to come through from time to time, and I remember when I first got on council, hearing some horror stories, and people were definitely on some hard times, but it seems as of late, this is being used sort of as a crutch to prolong a situation that we probably need to go in and, like you say, shut down right away. And it's going to be some tough calls when we do have to say, no, we can't issue this temporary, or whether it's 60 days or 6 months, your time is up. We just can't continue to allow the temporaries to go on, because I recall some concerns about safety. You know, these present some safety issues where they come to firefighters going into certain situations, things not being up to code that we put in place to protect people's safety. A builder couldn't go in and build a structure and sell it and let someone live in some of these conditions people are getting these temporaries to do. And it's because we put things in place for people's safety. And if we continue to allow the initial 6 months to go on, then they file for an extension and get another 6 months, if I'm understanding correctly, they can do it, they can get an extension for up to another 6 months with the way the ordinance is written now. So we basically are saying that we will allow you to live in some cases substandard conditions that may present a safety hazard up to a year. And hopefully nothing happens to where there's no escape route, or firefighters need to get in, or something needs to go on to go in and get someone out. So it's going to be some tough calls, whether it's 60 days or 6 months, or telling someone, no, we can't do an extension. But every last temporary dwelling, emergency temporary that we've allowed, I don't know if it ended well, and now we're here in a situation where we feel like someone has abused the process, and which may not be the norm, but at some point we got to make the call. Is this the right thing to do for the citizen? Is it the best thing to do as a department for the county? And it's a tough call to say we're not going to issue anymore. It's a tough call to go from 6 months to 60 days, but that's why we were put in this position, to make the tough calls. And if our department head says we probably need to look at doing away with it, I think we need to by all means consider that as an option, because at the end of the day, we make the final call, but she's here to advise us of what she thinks and what we should be doing in the best interest of a county and also as the citizen at the same time. So I will consider her request.
Mr. Winkler.
And basically, you know, what Councilman Roddy just said, I agree. If a staff department head comes before us saying they see a problem and they want our permission to look at ways to fix the problem, I think we should back them up on whatever that problem is. That's their job. My question is, on the previous reading we just had, the last line says that staff recommends that this request be conditioned to a certain date. Did we need that in the reading of the last motion? Because we just made the motion to approve.
Since it's a new application, it's good for 6 months now.
Okay.
Okay. I certainly listened to staff. I'm kind of the persuasion of Mr. Williams and kind of Mr. Henderson. An all or none policy by government, usually the next thing we have that comes before us will be, darn, we shouldn't have done that. So I think I'm hearing a majority say we want to hear whatever you want to offer. So at least we'll hear what you recommend.
Thank you.
Next item is discussion and council direction. Here again, this is what it exactly says. Staff is just asking for guidance regarding preparing or to punt adequate public facilities ordinance. Mr. Williams, did I hear you grunt?
Yeah, I was just ahead of it.
Okay.
I was on 14, but I can talk about 13.
Okay. Well, I've called your name out.
The reason that we started talking about it, whether to have an adequate public facilities ordinance, is because when we talk about voting developments down or anything down because of traffic issues, without one, we cannot. But in reading this, you know, in order to have an adequate public facilities ordinance, we should have a capital improvements plan. I think we need a capital improvement plan whether we have an APFO or not. So as far as the real question here was, and it makes it appear that we need to decide whether we're going to have one tonight, so we can get it in the budget. We can actually go ahead and plan for whatever budget, for whatever, as if we're going to do it, and then through the budget process, and then even when we vote for it, when it comes up for expenditure, decide whether to do it or not. But I definitely think we need to do whatever we can do to get a capital improvements plan, and from that, decide whether we need an APFO.
Okay. Mr. Winkler.
I'm not sure which one comes first, but we need to do something, so, yeah. We need to, if it means voting for it tonight, and getting it in the line on the budget, you know, let's do it, so. We'll vote again on the budget, but.
Mr. Johnson.
When I've read this memo, and thank you for doing it, one of the things I had brought up was Regent Parkway, and the fact that Regent Parkway is a county road, and if we want a stoplight on Regent Parkway, we can't even put one there, because unless SCDOT won't pay for it, and we don't monitor or control stoplights in York County, and how we could actually address issues like that. So I guess, and then when I read that, and you referenced this in your memo, so is there another way to put a stoplight on Regent Parkway if it was needed, short of doing an adequate public facilities ordinance? Or I guess I'm trying to figure out, is that a necessary requirement for me to go to the next step?
No, you wouldn't need to, can you hear me, or is it
I can hear
reverberating? You don't have to have an adequate public facilities ordinance to do a traffic light. I thank you for allowing me to clarify or to expand a little bit. We have a lack of baseline data. Whether you have an adequate public facilities ordinance or not, we have a lack of baseline data on traffic. There's some gaps in it. So even if you didn't do an adequate public facilities ordinance, by allowing us or considering some additional resources to collect some of the data, we could maybe fill in some of those gaps, such as whether or not a traffic light is needed, because we can't even answer that question for you right now because we don't have the traffic counts on it, and to be able to answer that adequately. So,
Would I get that data out of a capital improvement plan?
possibly. The way I would look at it is the data could be used not just for capital improvement program, but it could be used as baseline data to answer questions about basic traffic issues. It could be used in part of your pennies project because we would have additional data for the committee to look at. We are actually making some recommendations out of the comprehensive plan. One of them is a thoroughfare plan. We could use the data for that plan as well. So.
Cox?
This issue has come up because we have talked for months, and we have asked staff for direction about what can we do to ensure that a development is not put on a road that is currently failing. And what we were told repeatedly is there is nothing you can do short of doing this. So I just want to make sure, and I think Councilman Williams said it perfectly when he said, in order for us to deny development, when it is not going to be the safe thing to do on a road, we have to have something like this in place. Is that right?
Generally, yes. So if you're going to deny a development based on roads, we need some sort of legal avenue to do that. It's the preliminary plat issue. We need either an adequate public facilities ordinance, or we need a development fee, I think is what we had called it as well, or some sort of master plan that says this is the level of service we need to maintain. We're either not at that level of service, or you're degrading it and you need to fix it. So
how does the traffic impact analysis not handle that?
on the traffic impact analysis, it's a snapshot in time. It's as the development comes in. So when a development comes in, per ordinance, we have criteria of when you have to do a traffic impact analysis. It depends on how many trips you generate. Are you on a certain type of road? At that point, the developer pays for what I call direct impacts. You need an XL decel lane. If it's on a state road, possibly a traffic light, things of that nature. But when it's a issue of a background traffic, which is what Councilwoman Cox, I think, is talking about, the traffic impact analysis identifies what we probably already know, but the developer is not required to make the improvement because they didn't create the situation. That situation already exists. They may be making it a little bit worse, but they can't fund 100% of the condition that already exists to fix it.
I got a follow-up question to that.
Okay, then you go ahead and then Mr. Henderson.
Met with a developer this morning who has put about $1.8 million into a road directly in front of their development. Explain to me how we got to a point, how we got there. I mean, how do we get to a point where a developer says, I'm going to put $1.8 million of my own money into improving a road directly in front of my development versus what we would get out of this adequate public facilities ordinance? I guess I'm trying to, I get what you're saying is that this allows us to stop, just say, this road is an F, you're not gonna make it any better, we're not gonna let you develop here. I'm also looking at it from that second step of making improvements to the road so the development could move forward, because I assume there has to be some type of mitigation involved in that. So what is different between what we're currently doing and what this would require?
Best example I have, and I'm sorry that I keep using Highway 49, 274, and 557. Development's about a mile from it. Let's just say hypothetically, it's about a mile from it. All right. TIA says the traffic is going to go through that intersection. That intersection's at a level of service of F. That subdivision is not causing it to be a level of service of F. It's already a level of service of F. Right now, currently, there is no funding to improve it. So what Councilwoman Cox is talking about is if this subdivision comes online, it's going to make it even worse. So the question is, why do we keep approving these subdivisions? An adequate public facilities ordinance would say, well, you can't until that intersection is improved. But that's not necessarily on the back of the developer. That makes the county make some hard decisions about when are you going to improve it and how are you going to approve it, because you can't just throw up your hands and say, well, we're never going to do anything, we'll just stop all the development. That's not the way it works. So the county has some obligations there. Not being familiar with the development you're talking about with the $1.8 million worth of improvements, that type of development, it sounds like to me, there's something that they need for access for their development, and that's what I would say it's directly attributable to them, and then they can be required to do those types of improvements.
Once I'm on the hook, we do the study and I'm now on the hook as the county to make and I identify that I need to make an improvement at that intersection, what's the time frame that the county has to act? And how do we go about designating that as something? Because right now, unless it's a pennies project, we don't designate any roads for additional funding. So I'm trying to figure out what's that mechanism.
I wish I had a good, solid answer on how much time you have. I don't know. It's what I would say is you need to move, or you need to have a plan that's reasonable and rational, and you need to move as quickly as you can for it, and have a definite schedule for when you're going to make these improvements. And that's the best I can say.
And that would be part of the capital improvement plan.
Well, I definitely believe we need a capital
Yes, we
improvement
do.
plan. There's no question about that.
Agreed.
Mr. Henderson.
Well, first of all, I'm glad we're talking about this, and this is another thing that's been looked at and considered and tossed around from time to time, and I'm glad to know that we're moving forward with something to where we can have legal safeguards in our decision-making process. But with that in mind, I also want to remind council and anyone and everyone out there that, when it comes to a major safety matter, even if you go as far as thinking that Duke Power has not updated their evacuation process, protocol for such areas as all the peninsulas all along 274 and going down that way, and for us to reject zoning as a result of not allowing just extreme density on every one of those peninsulas with roads in, one road out, you got a major evacuation. The government and Duke Power are saying it's okay to do. We keep blessing a lot of this from the government standpoint, and let me remind you, the Cherokee Indians trusted the government too. And all I can say is we have a right to turn down zoning for a number of reasons. And especially when we know that it's just a matter of time that we have some type of evacuation where you have people trying to get out of there for whatever reason, and you're going to have a lot of unnecessary death. And this is not about fear. This is about common sense. Because it's just a matter of time. It will happen. And if I'm dead and gone, some of you are still here, remember I said it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Roddy.
I just have a quick question, and here's my concern. If we go the route to do the adequate public facilities ordinance, we're looking at getting a consultant to come in and do it. Are we looking for a tool on council just so we can stand by and not approve these developments? Because once the consultant comes back and says, you need to do this, you need to do this, are we prepared to do those things to get in position so that these developers would be able to develop certain parcels of land, certain tracts of land? Or are we just looking at another tool to have in our tool belt to deny some developments? Because we know some sentiments on council is to slow down the growth. Is this going to be used as one of those tools if we don't put in place the moratorium in some places? I'm starting to get the sense that we're looking for another justification to say no. Because if we wholeheartedly believe we need to do this adequate public facilities ordinance, we're saying we're willing to do what it takes in certain, whether it's an intersection or road, to get it up to speed so that it can be developed. I don't want to see us do this and then just sit on our hands and not do anything when a developer comes up and says, I want to develop this piece of property, and we say, well, it's not ready, we can't do anything. Well, what's your plan to fix it so I can develop? Well, we don't have the money, and we all know money is an issue. Is this just going to be another tool for council to sit on our hands and not do anything? I would be reluctant. If it's starting to take on that kind of feel of just giving us another tool to stand behind a no situation, when it comes to developing certain pieces of property.
Uh,
Is that the route this is going? Because I kind of,
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, that's why I was suggesting that we don't have to decide that tonight, because that APFO is very, it does put you on the hook. There's no, you're on the hook. You can't do it. There's a reason why no other communities have them, because it puts the community on the hook. But part of the discussion is the capital improvement program. And we need to do that, whether we do an APFO or not, in my opinion. So I would just encourage that we go ahead and budget for it. But we got a lot of learning to do between now and the time we pass an APFO. If we do so, it would be very reluctantly. Another question is many of the roads that we're talking about are state roads. So we're going to put ourselves on the hook to improve state roads. And that's, there's a bunch of questions. But to answer that question, it can't be used as a tool. Because once you have one, you have to have it in place and a plan for doing it. And when you deny a zoning, the time frame is there to when they expect that improvement to be made.
I just have a clarifying question, I guess.
Yeah.
I heard you say capital improvement plan we could use for pennies, we can use for a lot of other things. It sounds to me like that's kind of a no-brainer. We need to do that. Whether it means putting it in the next budget if we can't do it now. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know if you know yet, if we've looked into that. I think as a council, we need to give the direction that should be step one, and let's move forward with figuring out what that costs and how to do it. But, the capital improvement plan scares me in a number of ways, because the only way we're gonna be able to fix that is raise taxes on our citizens once we put ourselves on the hook for that, and I can't start doing that every time we turn around, so.
Can we?
Well, I just want to make one
Ms.
comment,
Cox.
and I can only speak for myself, coming from this, is that all of this was prompted by the question of how do we deal with roads? And the question is going to be, how do we get everybody at the table, the folks who are the developers, the individuals who come to the table in a meaningful way? And right now, I don't think there's anyone on this council that wants to stop growth for the sake of stopping it, but we do have a problem, and how are we going to fix it? And we certainly have got to get a capital improvement plan done. I am in favor of us budgeting for that, and I don't think that this is a tool that, I think that takes a huge level of distrust. I think we're going to have to trust one another to move forward with this, because I don't think what we don't have right now is we have no mechanism sitting up here to deny or to delay a project that is going on a failing road. We don't have a way to do that, and that is a huge safety concern. It is a huge safety problem, and the only way for us to deal with that doesn't mean that we say no and don't come back. That means we can't do this right now, but let's work together and figure out how we're going to make this work well. So, we need to move forward with this. And as I said, when we talked about this 5 months ago, this was the only solution that staff had proposed, that this is a way we can do something about it. And so I think we've got, if we want the ability to do something, this is what as staff, we say, let's listen to staff, let's listen to staff. This is the only way that we can make the first step on that.
Are you talking about the capital improvement plan, or are you talking about the APFO?
I think the capital improvement plan is a must, and that is a precursor to the APFO. If that's what I'm hearing staff to say.
Well,
That doesn't necessarily mean, doing a capital improvement plan doesn't necessarily mean definitely an APFO, but it's the first step, and it's something that's got to be done. We've got to give instruction by March 11th as to whether or not to try and budget for that, so I think.
and here again, this is what triggered the staff's, the budget concerns, and Mr. Williams makes sense that, well, hey, you can budget it, you don't have to spend it, we put it back in the general fund if we don't use it. That being said, I understand the, the capital improvement plan logic. I in no way at all am for adequate public facilities ordinance. It never works, it's challenged, it loses. There's a reason why nobody does it. We're not the first one to talk about this. This has been talked about for years, and that we should not get so reactionary, and I know staff brought it to us, but we should not get so reactionary that we jump on something that's just like an Act 388. It's just going to make things worse. So if you're asking for guidance, I certainly hear a majority of council members say that they want to look into the capital improvement plan, but, and we might not have to need a head count again, but I am adamantly opposed to the adequate public facilities ordinance. I don't want the rear end of the horse leading the horse. So, anybody else all driven for the APFO, or is it just mainly no?
What was your question?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for listening to me. But the question was that everybody's saying we need a comprehensive, a capital improvement plan to look into, but, and that's a driving factor for the APFO or whatever. So I can see the need for planning, looking ahead, evaluating, but in no way am I for the logic or the illogic of an adequate public facilities ordinance. So I'm saying that should not even be part of the equation. Do a majority of council members agree, or do they not agree? That's what we need to let staff know right now.
I mean, I said at the beginning, I think we could keep our options open, and then as we learn, and, it might not be an APFO, but it might be the developer fee that you was talking about that takes the place of it. I mean, at this point, I don't have time keeping the options open, and it might become real apparent at a budget process when they say, this is how much a capital improvement plan is, and this is how much an APFO is, and they say, we'll take this out right now.
If anything, it ties the hands of the developers to help a drastic situation. But anyway, okay, so I hear one adamantly opposed, one open to the suggestion.
I'm open, and as far as I'm concerned, we've got to have some ways, or either just simple backbone to be able to say no at times, or put, you got to have a situation, and I am absolutely against an all-out moratorium, okay? But I do believe that we have got to have some things in place, whatever they may be, even if it's just having backbone, to say that this is what we've got to do, limiting permitting or whatever, in order to slow the growth down to where we can catch up. We're creating situations out on 49 that is for older drivers and teenage drivers. We are creating a situation where it is, no doubt in my mind, creating additional wrecks and accidents and people getting hurt, and all around the lake as far as that goes. I want growth. I want good, solid, quality growth. But at times it just seems like there's no regard for the infrastructure. There, and I'm talking about maybe some of the mass developers. And again, this is my belief. I believe that, when you have folks that come in here from Canada or, wherever they may be, because they may have had a bad falling out with other counties, but they come here because of our loose standards, and they're allowed to just kind of roam free, do what they want to. Well, there you go. If it's not a bad road, Ms. Cox, it will be one soon. So with all that, I think we need to really be open about anything and everything to be offered and presented when it comes to, as far as having some legal safeguards to help us. Because if you don't want to rezone something, for whatever your reasoning is, at least if you feel like you got legal safeguards, whether it be this or maybe some other things, and even all the way down to the safety issue I mentioned a while ago about a nuclear disaster. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be argued, and when you're looking out for the safety of the people, I don't understand even that about the nuclear. As far as I know, radiation still kills. And I think that, you know, we should even consider that. And there's nobody in this world, as far as I'm concerned, there's no judge in their right mind that's going to hold something like that against us because we are limiting something right near a nuclear power plant. You know, and these other things. I just hope that we will remain open-minded on all this.
Well, I would just say that certainly there's a dreaded desire to deal, but understand that growth's a good thing. And I appreciate everybody up here, I think, agreeing with that. Growth is a good thing. It's a good problem to have. I know the road demands have triggered some concerns, but we need to sit up here and think clearly. There's a reason why adequate public facilities ordinance has never been used by governing bodies in South Carolina. I don't want to just pick something because it's there and the staff threw it out to us when it's not a good thing to do. But, okay, I've heard two, we're open to it. One that's going to get sickened by it. So we got 4 more people to hear from.
Well, I'll chime in. I'm saying no because I don't think we will rise to the level once it comes back on certain areas that we need to address. I just don't think this council will step up and do what we need to do, considering an abundance of the roads that's probably failing are going to be state roads, and as pointed out, are we going to be on the hook to fix state roads and address state needs with our money? I just don't think this council will go that route and will won't even do it, so I'll say no.
So,
And I guess if you're looking for everybody to chime in,
yeah.
Since you're counting.
We're trying to count for her benefit.
I fully 100% support capital improvement plan. I think we need it. I think we should look at all options, and we've asked staff to bring us all options, which they've done. But everything I'm hearing from staff and from everyone that understands capital improvement plans much better than me says that once we do that, you know, we're on the hook for fixing state roads and intersections and other things. And the only way we have to fix those is to raise taxes on our citizens because there's no other money for it. And I cannot support that. So at this point, from what I've learned from looking at all the options, 100% yes, capital projects, but I cannot support the adequate public facilities.
Okay, so we got a 3-2 against right now. So we got 2 more people to speak.
No, we're not voting.
Well, we need to have them. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll just say this.
That is 3-3.
Capital improvement plan, I fully agree with. We originally started talking about an adequate public facilities ordinance in January. It came up at a transportation meeting. It was purely tied to developments and how we were going to do it. Do I like everything I've been told about adequate public facility ordinance? No, I don't. I don't like some of the ability to backdoor impact fees in a reverse way, and that concerns me. Do I think we should just stop all discussion and studying of it? No, I think we should look at this. I think we should study it. Do I think we should pass it? I got about a 4-page memo or 3.5-page memo, and that's it. It's the only thing I know about an adequate public facilities ordinance other than what I've had numerous developers tell me over the past 2 weeks. So I'm willing to look at it. I certainly don't want to see us try to backdoor something. And as to the statement that will we step up, it's past time for this county to step up to the plate when it comes to fixing roads. We have allowed a disaster to occur, and if we don't step up, and if it takes an adequate public facility ordinance that solely puts the burden on us to make us step up, then maybe that's what we need to make us actually stand up and do something, because we've yet to address a failing road system in York County that has, if you were at the RFATS meeting the other night, or the other day, every road they went through was an F. Every road. It wasn't a single road they identified that wasn't. And when they started talking about price tags to fix those roads, it was $5, $8, $10 million every road. You can make a little Band-Aid and make it from a F to an E. I didn't even know there was an E till I was sitting in that meeting, to an E, but you're not making the necessary improvements. And we've got to step up on that. I don't know if adequate public facilities ordinance is the answer, but I don't have any problem looking at it. And I think that's all staff is asking us, is whether or not we want to consider it, and it'll be a budget issue. And I know sitting through 3 budgets with this group, there's a good chance it won't get through a budget.
You have your answer. So now, after all the money spent and a year of study, we're going to consider something that nobody else thinks is logical.
And it makes Britt sick.
Yeah, it does, a little bit. But just remember now, perception's everything. So how this adversely affects our economic growth over the next year, it's not going to be a positive. It's going to be a negative on economic growth, because even though we sat up here, some of us, and said, hey, I just want to hear about it, the perception's going to become that we went in that direction. So we're going to have to take 4-3.
They weren't listening.
So we're going to have to take the repercussions that fall out from this, and it's not going to be pretty, but I'll just leave it at that, and we move forward. And let's see, next item, discussion and direction to staff regarding potential ordinance revisions to public notice requirements. Here again, before we get off too far, let me just say it would be better as a policy and not an ordinance to give staff flexibility to just do it in an easy way for us. But do we have a discussion from Mr. Williams?
Yeah, that's the one I was raising my hand for a minute ago. Went through this on Rock Hill Planning Commission, and whenever you have public notice, there's always somebody on the other side of the line that says, why didn't I get a postcard? So I think wherever we draw the line, we're not going to solve that problem. We do need to determine the distance that we think is far enough. There's a couple of things in staff's memo that I like. One, the county attorney recommends that we don't codify a distance further than the state ordinance, and I think that's probably a good idea. But we can, by policy, in certain cases or all the time, increase that distance. But I really like staff's recommendation about either this distance or this number of people. I think 30 was the example, but whatever that number is, because that's typically when we have the problems, is when you have a piece of land that's bordered by 3 or 4 huge pieces of property, and you only send out 3 postcards and nobody sees it. But if you get 30 people see it, then there's a chance that they get. I really like that suggestion, because because some of them. Some of the notice requirements, we're going to notice stuff that nobody cares about, and if it's 500 feet, we got all these postcards. But if you can get 30, I like that. That's my input.
Okay. Mr. Winkler.
I agree. If we need to do it by policy, good. I am not wanting to see. I can see situations in some of these more dense areas where we can wind up noticing 500 people within a few hundred feet if you're not careful. So I think there's got to be limits on some of it. And if our current application fee does not cover our expenses for whatever the noticing is or becomes, then I think we need to adjust the fee to cover it. So.
Ms. Cox.
Thank you, Audra, for putting this together. I think this is a step in the right direction. 250 feet to notice folks is just not adequate. Doubling that to 500 feet, I think will go a long way to making sure that folks get the notices that are required to speak up if they want to do that. I don't have a problem with it being in the form of policy so that we don't restrict ourselves. And I definitely agree that this cost should be passed on to the applicant to make sure that we're not paying for that. The city of Rock Hill does 350 feet, which, the county is spread further apart. So this is the least we can do to address, and I know that there's been a lot of folks who have come who would have appreciated this, and the public, I think, will appreciate this, and I appreciate your work on that.
That being said, we'll put trust in the staff just to come up with the proper policy, just to provide the proper notice, more thorough notice to the surrounding citizens. Is that good enough, Audra? Next item. I can only wonder where we're going with this one. Discussion and directions of staff regarding ordinance revision requiring all future roads to be private.
I'll go first.
Mr. Johnson.
I appreciate, again, this was something that came before the Transportation Committee back in January, and I appreciate staff for coming up with this plan. I think this is why you study things right here, because this had a nice sound to it until you read about it, and then it became something that I at least came to the conclusion that this made no sense. There can't be a neighborhood like Baxter, where they're collecting about 97% of their dues. I think last HOA meeting I went to, they told me that. Can't imagine the cost of trying to repave all of their roads. I've met with the Regent Park HOA monthly, if not 2 or 3 times a month for the past 6 months. Almost all of their roads are private, and I can tell you their roads are in poor shape, and they are assessing their residents for those roads. My concern is simply, there isn't a mechanism that I can read that allows an HOA, once an HOA fails, how are you going to fix this? How is the county going to step in and we're just going to go assess everybody? That's, talk about not having the will. There's no way this county's going to go in and assess an entire neighborhood to redo their roads. It's just not possible. I had asked for a cost-benefit analysis to be done. What do you estimate the cost of resurfacing versus the estimate of us having to go in and fix a road that had fallen into complete disrepair because the HOA fell apart? We weren't able to get that. You weren't able to estimate it, but I believe that cost would be greater in there. I get that we are spending a lot of money paving roads. In my district, I had $6.5 million worth of requests for repaving in District 1. I had $500,000 last year. I couldn't even, if you didn't have a score of 44 or less out of 100, you didn't even get on my list to be considered. That's what we're facing. And I get, let's not take any more roads and let's not do that, but my problem is I just don't think I don't believe this works at the end of the day. And I think this creates a greater problem than exists today. And I can tell you, the first time an HOA folds and they walk away and 200 homes need their road repaired, and it's a private road and you can't use any of our money on it because of that, we're going to have a disaster when the school buses can't go down and the ambulance can't go down, and who's going to step in and how's it going to happen? I've not seen a plan, and if I saw a plan that I believed in that could fix that, I might support something like this, but I just don't see it. So I'm not in support of us stopping the taking of roads into the system. I think it's a cost that we are going to have to figure out long term, and whether that means we are going to add this to pennies so we can do that, so we can do resurfacing, it's something we need to address.
Mr. Winkler.
I'm not going to support this. I just see it as a way to take what's already a pretty bad problem and make it a much larger problem with roads, and not taking them until they're in such horrible shape that we have to spend a whole lot of money on them even to do anything with them. I hope and trust our staff that we've addressed this enough with revisions and our ordinances and with bonds and stuff that it's not an issue until 15 or 20 years down the road when it comes into the maintenance side. And that's much less expensive to maintain a road that's up to county standards than it is one that's turned back into gravel pretty much. So I can't support not taking roads.
Mr. Roddy.
Well,
I'll just go down the line.
Yeah, I think Councilman Johnson hit several home runs with his statements. We can't go down this road and put it on the backs of homeowners, HOAs. It will be disastrous. I got a call from a gentleman. He asked about this particular item. He was asking, well, would you give any tax discount to neighborhoods if they're going to maintain their own roads? I told him no. He said, well, you certainly would. It wouldn't be fair to charge everyone the same millage across the board and some roads you're maintaining and others you're not, and you're putting the burden of maintaining their own roads on that particular neighborhood. And I certainly agree with that. There's no logical way we will be able to do it. And, you know, I told this gentleman that this seems to be like a move that you would do in a county where their government is failing and they have no other way to do it. But here in York County, I don't think we're far from failing as a government. I think we're sound financially, and I think we just need to man up and woman up and face the realities that this is going to be a cost that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to work through some tough times and bite some bullets to solve these problems, because we hear the same rhetoric about the state doesn't have any money to help with litter pickup. The state doesn't have any money to help with roads. So we need to solidly come together and figure out a long-term plan as to how we're going to address these road issues, because we're not closing roads. We're opening new roads. They're getting worse. And like my distinguished councilman to my left said, you know, it takes money. It takes money. And I know we do all we can with what we have to try to stretch it to make it work. But at some point, the only way that we're going to have, the only tool that we have in our chest to address this is our tax base. And no one wants to hear it, but no one wants to drive on bad roads. And you can't have it both ways. We're going to have to start biting the bullet and coming up with mechanism. It's imperative that we get a maintenance component onto our pennies program that will allow us a little more flexibility to address this issue. I think the worst thing we can really start to do is just say we can't afford any more growth because we don't have our roads are failing so bad. I think that's one of the worst things we can do. But the best thing we can do is get some mechanisms in place that will allow us the funding to come in so that we don't hold back and don't wait till a road gets to be a F grade to try to go out and address it. You know, if we can catch it when it's on its decline, go in and do some maintenance on it and extend the life of it. And I think we got some options that we can use, but we in some good times here in York County, but we're in some tough times when it comes to dealing with our roads. So I think roads, that's the number one call that I get across the board is about our road situation. And I feel bad when I say, well, it's a state road. The state needs to step in. When I get a call about litter, it's a state road. The state needs to step in. We're going to have to start taking ownership and filling in some of the gaps. But I would be real reluctant to say we need to raise a pot of money to dump on our state roads when we need to put the pressure on our state delegation to step up to the plate and solve this for us or assist us with it. We're in some good times and we're in some crunch times when it comes to our roads. And when we start talking about stopping development because of our road conditions, I think that speaks volumes. We have a road problem. We have a road issue here in York County.
Ms. Cox.
We do not have enough money currently to pay for the roads that we have in our system. I believe that we should find a mechanism to ensure that growth pays for growth. That includes us looking at lots of different options, increasing our admin fees, which apparently are woefully lower than our counterparts all around us. We should be increasing that amount in order to do that. As far as the roads, it seems to me that we need to ensure, and the only thing that we have control over is property taxes. How do we ensure that the property taxes of a new development, new folks that come in, that development is going to be able to sustain itself and that we can pay for the roads going forward? And I don't think it's ludicrous at all to think that, and to try to put in place and ensure that any road that we take on is going to be captured in the property tax assessment that goes on. We're just making the problem worse. So I hear the council saying that they're not for this, and it sounds like the majority is headed that route. But again, this harkens back, and the whole reason we're willing to sit up here and talk about a moratorium, but we're not going to talk about, stop taking in private roads when we can't pay for the ones that we currently have. It just seems to me to be a little illogical.
Mr. Henderson.
I'll just say that, talking about reducing permitting to not taking in roads and so forth, to me, I think we're having to choose the lesser of two evils. Moratorium, bad word. Moratorium, lockdown, stop altogether. In my opinion, bad word. But some of these other things that we're talking about, I think is a compromise. Because, again, the state's not getting their act together. We can't generate enough money, or else we have to tax everybody out their ears in order to get all these roads right and like they need to be. So I don't like making this decision. I despise it. I don't like having to deal with these things, but we're dealing with reality. And I know in your little area of the world and my little area of the world, and what's near and dear to you is not, well, I mean, in many cases it is near and dear to me, but I'm just saying what's near and dear to you, I know you don't want to hear it, but again, it's the lesser of two evils, and none of us is enjoying this at all. But we're going to have to do something to make sure we don't get ourselves in a fix financially. We don't want to end up like some other counties and places that's mismanaged, and because and get to the point to where we tell you got to buy a gun, because we can't have any police out there from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I don't want to ever get to even anywhere close to that kind of issue or situation. So I can foresee that we're going to have to make some compromises in order to get some things in order and plan and to just so, because after a while, all your expenses is going to far outweigh your revenues. And again, we've just got to, we've got to look at some things and compromise some way, somehow.
Mr. Williams.
I agree with staff's recommendation.
That's it?
I don't need to change the majority of the mind to the council.
Yeah, just for the public's knowledge, since they don't read the memos, I mean, we don't have the perfect way, but we're doing it the best way right now. If you make them private, the HOAs won't pay for it, and they'll cut corners on providing the standards. And then once the standards are poor, the maintenance is impossible, roads collapse, then the county's on the cuff for the bill, and we're dealing with roads instead of repaving every 15 years or so, which is like $325,000 per mile. Maintenance is about $7,000 per mile per staff number. So I'd much rather see developers get it to the minimum standard required, and then we take over maintenance instead of leaving it up to HOAs that won't do it the proper way, and we'll run out of money, and then we're on the hook by safety, government requirements, and everything else. So in that winded way, I certainly agree with staff too. So we don't have to pursue that one. Thank you very much, Audra. Next item, consider approval for application of calcium chloride to qualifying unpaved roads, 468,774 feet from financial year 2015-2016 Road Maintenance General Fund, $1 and 1.1 cents per gallon, or 0.505 per linear foot.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider sheriff's request for classification changes.
Move to approve.
Okay, we got
So
it.
you can debate it.
Okay, need a second.
Second.
Discussion. So Bruce or Bill or both of you?
Mr. Chairman, these are the issues that we've been talking about that involves a number of positions that includes, I believe it was 9 positions. And we have talked with county management, and I want Mr. Shanahan to speak up if I say something that's not correct, but we've been, with Lisa and us, we've been talking back and forth by the way of emails more than anything else in regards to these 9 positions that I've discussed with council, and that being the DNA analyst, the DNA technical leader, the crime analyst, the executive administrative assistant, public information officer, the chief jail administrator, the assistant chief jail administrator, the security commander, the captain in the detention, and the watch commander lieutenants, which was 2 positions there. Well, it was actually, I believe 2 positions there. And it was a total of 9. And they agree that the pay grade level that we suggest, and it would only mean $3,000 to council to make all of these corrections, with the exception of the 2 DNA people that I'll be talking to you in executive session about. But these pay grade levels, if Mr. Shanahan, am I speaking correctly?
Yes, sir, we spoke.
Yes, sir, we spoke with our labor attorneys, and they said that this approval is permissible due to the needs of the elected sheriff based on the council wishes to accommodate the sheriff. And this grant would not, and this would not grant any additional pay increases except for small increases for the 2 employees in the position of watch commander. So we're agreeing with this, yes, sir.
Okay, so you agree with Bruce. Any other, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, and I think Sheriff Bryan has done a good job of presenting this case multiple times, and I guess we'll do it again in executive session here in a minute. But I just wanted to, I still have the same concerns about, I know we have some of the same needs in some other departments, both by elected officials and other officials, and it's a shame that MGT couldn't come. I was really hoping and still hope that we can get a process to address the other ones to where they know. I mean, one of the things I was surprised is that, Rock Hill didn't return the survey. So Rock Hill is definitely a comparable entity that would justify some of these increases. And the $3,000 this year, I understand, but next year I think it immediately goes up to about 33 with no increases. And then the changes in classification. I just, before we get to, before all the other departments line up and say, Bruce says I need all these people, you gave him yours, give him mine too. I want to come up with a process that's somewhat defensible and as sound as the one that you've gone through.
Yeah.
And that company will be here at the next meeting.
Yeah, and just for Rock Hill, while they didn't do the survey, they did send information to the South Carolina City County Managers Association, and that was part of the group study. So we did get some other information
Right,
there.
but and I don't know if it was in averages or
Yeah,
what,
no
but it's,
specifics.
I mean, that's who, I mean, comparing him with Buford doesn't do a whole lot of good, because that's not who he's really competing with, but Gastonia and Charlotte Mecklenburg and Rock Hill's who he's competing with. And I do think that he's found, I mean, he's described his process ad nauseum, but everybody hasn't seen that. I think we need to come up with a process for when other folks come up here that's as legally defensible as his.
We did a memorandum, and I assume that y'all received this memorandum that I sent out in February 22nd.
Yes.
And if you will look at that, you will see the problems that we have with MGT. And of course, I'll be glad to be here when MGT appears and, and face them in regards to this.
Sounds like you
I
want me to
believe
be.
that, if I'm not mistaken, out of all the county positions, and Lisa, you correct me if I state something wrong, out of all the county positions, they looked at 21 positions. They didn't even have anything to compare DNA analysts to, but yet they stuck that number on. And they never, ever looked at our organizational charts. And the people that we've got in this study, they had nobody to even compare it to. They weren't one of the 21s that they even looked at. And I'm telling you, I'll be honest with you, and I've talked with the major this afternoon, if I have anybody else that I want to put in for reclassification, I pray that we don't use MGT because they have failed York County. And we have living proof. And you're talking about the study, Mr. Shanahan, do you realize that those figures were 2013 and it's now 2016, the salary figures that they used? 2013. We've pulled all those figures. We've compared them, and they don't compare to what our employees are making. And I would be glad to show you documentation. Major's sitting out here. I assume you got the documentation in hand, but we can show you exactly what we're talking about. And MGT did nothing except they sent out all these surveys. Well, let me tell you something. There's a process called Freedom of Information. They entitled to that information. And if they wanted to compare us apples to apples, they would have filed a FOIA against Rock Hill and Charlotte PD and Spartanburg and Greenville and all the other comparable agencies to compare us with. But no, they picked Beaufort County and I think Lancaster County, if I'm not mistaken. And that's just not right. We're in a market right here in York County that we compete with Charlotte. This past week, I had a man to turn in his resignation. He'd been with me about 4 years. He's an outstanding officer. And he says, I can't feed my family. And I will tell you, if he had been getting raises over the past years and the study had come back the way it was supposed to, I lost another applicant last week. Rock Hill's offered him $4,000 more a year than what I could offer him. He was an academy graduate. We can't compare with him. And that's the only point that I'm trying to make and trying to convince y'all that, and these here, these really get me. These 9 positions. They're just not right for these employees. But I'm going to take up some more executive sessions. I won't take any more time unless somebody has a question.
Any questions for Bruce?
I have a couple quick questions. One thing that concerns me, if MGT has failed us across the board, I can see other departments lining up to come also and say, well, this wasn't classified appropriately. We think more money need to be put on this position. So if we're going to open up an avenue for the sheriff, I hope that same process and avenue is going to be opened up for other departments as well. Is that something we're considering also? Because I've gotten several calls from other people that didn't feel like the study justified some of the findings. So are we going to be open to those increases with other departments as well, or is this just a open and closed case with the sheriff department? How are we going to treat this as a staff or council?
Bill, I'll let you have that one.
Great question, sir. First of all, it's hard to comment on it until MGT come at the next meeting. They're going to give us a presentation. They'll be walking through everything that they did, everybody they compared it to, and once you've heard that, I'd be better able to answer that. I don't.
Allow everyone all the department heads and all the elected officials to know about this so that they can be present and listen.
And if I'm sure it's public information. And since the study's been in such question, how much did we pay MGT to do this study?
Help me.
And it took all of how long? Okay.
I just want to say, when Sheriff came to us, I was concerned that we're opening up a can of worms for all the departments. But as Councilmember Williams said, the sheriff has done a good job, apparently, of documenting why these classifications were wrong, because our management, our county staff now is saying they agree with this. And from what I understand, our labor attorneys say as long as we can document why we are making the changes, we're okay to make them. So that said, it sounds like we kind of have a process, but maybe not a written process, but Bruce has followed it to the T, it looks like, so.
And I will I'd like to make this comment, Mr. Winkler and members of the council. I've got 300 and, how many employees have I got? 367, something like that? 367 employees, and I'm only talking about 9. And some of these are duplicate positions like the lieutenants. So there's not that many. I don't want it to sound like that everybody in the county was screwed because they weren't. But I would tell you this, these 9, and these are the 9 that I'm telling you they had no comparison with. And if they did compare them to anything, the comparison wasn't level, if you follow what I'm trying to say. And that's the only thing. So I don't think we're opening up a keg of worms or Pandora's box, but I will say this, if the other departments have people in there that was not considered in a proper manner, I'm not sure whether you've written the last check to MGT, but I would think about it. Thank you.
Bruce, I appreciate your efforts to help us get it right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in a law enforcement assistance and a support agreement with TK Police Department.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
Can I?
Yes.
So
Mr.
is there a way to simply say this
Amen.
and then tag on every one of them, just say TK, Rock Hill, rather than go through 8 separate votes on the exact same thing?
I'm for that.
Yeah, we did.
The way it's
The way it's
I'll let
kinda
the,
separated out.
well, the sheriff requires each relationship to be approved, and I think, for the record, I think it would be more
Yeah,
beneficial
just
to
hold
him
on. All you gotta do is say aye.
if this is challenged to have it separately.
That's not the sheriff, that's the state of South.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So, we're good?
All in favor, yeah.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in a law enforcement assistance and support agreement with the Rock Hill Police Department.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in a law enforcement assistance and support agreement with Fort Mill Police Department.
Move to
Move to
approve.
approve. Second.
Ah.
Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in a law enforcement assistance and support agreement with the Clover Police Department.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in a law enforcement assistance and support agreement with the Chester County Sheriff.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
Aye.
Question on the motion.
Aye.
Now, let's get this sequence right.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in a law enforcement assistance and support agreement, Cherokee County Sheriff.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
York.
See what you started? Council to consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in a law enforcement assistance and support agreement with the York Police Department.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider adopting a resolution to approve the York County Sheriff's participation in law enforcement assistance and support agreement with the Union County Sheriff.
Move to approve. Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I think we need to discuss this one.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Ms. Cox.
I think this is a good idea. I think we should approve this.
Thank you, ma'am. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, State Infrastructure Bank presentation and request to forward application to SIB.
Not so fast.
Basically, what we're doing now is we're gonna give you an update of where we're at on the infrastructure.
Who we give an update to?
Application and, request permission to move forward, sending it up to, Columbia.
Can we, can this
My
be
name is Bob
conducted?
Probst.
That's what
I'm
we
a
got
member
for,
of the
sorry.
team that was hired by the county to put the application together. And I'd like to give you a very brief overview of what's in there. Basically, we're calling it the I-77 Corridor Project to address the fact that it is an area of the county that's growing quickly, that is very significantly affected by jobs, and that we would propose upgrading 5 interchanges, basically exit 82 through exit 90. The total estimated cost at this time
I'm sorry. Okay. The total estimated cost of the, all the interchanges together, as you see, is 167.7. We put together $29 million of local matching funds, which are hard match, I guess you would call it, real money. Also suggesting $138.4 million of projects that you funded with your Pennies program that assist in the operation of the interchanges and make them flow better, or alternatively, that they reduce the amount of demand on I-77 by taking traffic off of the main lines themselves. And that based on the past, economic development is a key issue. Job creation is a key issue, and getting SIB money has been in the future, and is something that we've been advised that will continue, hopefully. What I can't say is what's going to happen. Obviously, the Senate's supposed to talk about some things tomorrow, but I think a lot of what I've been hearing them talk about really address the same issues as economic development. I think the Senate proposal right now is that the SIB would have to get the approval of the DOT, the new constituted DOT commission, if that passes, but it doesn't get rid of it.
Can you go back?
Oh, sure.
Well, you can do it on this slide, that's fine.
Okay.
You identify exit 82. It is not all of exit 82.
That's
It is
correct.
just 82C.
Selena's Road
Correct.
is the only portion right now that is proposed for modification.
My advice, anytime we're going to show this presentation, that it be very clear that it's 82C, because there is great misunderstanding with some on why A and B are not included.
Yes, sir.
And I have a lot of questions in that regard, but I wanted you to finish first.
Sure, we'll go through this real quickly.
I'll wait till you ask them then.
Here is a more detailed presentation on each of the interchanges for what the total cost is, what the matching funds are, and what the, obviously, the matching funds taken away from the total costs are give you how much we're requesting from the infrastructure bank. And also is the number of employees that would be served by that interchange. So that we felt was very important, is that there are certain numbers that are there today, and that huge numbers are anticipated in many of these interchanges, and they've totaled up basically to 40,000 new jobs that could be created in this area. If, as you talked about a lot about housing, but I think developers also look at access, the ability to serve their employees and to get them to work. And that has been a very strong selling point in the past. In addition to the hard match, as I mentioned before, $138 million of your money that you have already spent on roads.
Let me, while it's up, before you get off of it.
Yes, sir.
I'm perplexed by the Sutton Road projection of jobs, especially when I compare it to other ones. I mean, there at Sutton Road, you have a school getting ready to be built, you got the museum property, you got a truck stop, you got a doctor's office, and a residential going in there. And
There's an industrial park on the other side that's not finished, but I don't know that it's gonna employ that many people.
yeah.
I think what, this is not currently planned jobs. I think, to be very frank, what it is area that is zoned, that can be developed, and this is the capacity of those areas. So it's a little bit different.
Does that take into account the Spratt property off of 21? Is that what, I mean, is that what, considering that traffic would go to 77 that way, is that what that's considering? Because all of that is, all that's light industrial.
But it's zone, is it light
It's
industrial?
all zone light industrial, that's,
Yeah, we took in and analyzed about 5 additional properties within 2 miles
okay.
of that interchange, and then we took into account
Spratt's property could be 600 acres.
Crossing over 21 on the other side.
6
Use that.
major employers within that area. Now, yes, they have alternatives to go a different route, but that, we assumed that that was their primary on-off at that interchange.
And Well, I'll keep my word and I'll hold off until you get finished.
Yeah, and I'm curious about the difference between exit 90, whether that's appropriate to answer now or later. I mean, what are we doing up there so much more than everywhere else? If you're gonna get to that, that's fine.
Well, we got pictures that we can show
Okay.
you of each
All
of the
right.
interchanges.
All right.
So, where are we? Well, we're at a point where they've got a elaborate set of questions that you've got to answer, a lot of economic analyses, a lot of job issue information that's all been put together. So if you were to approve it, the next thing would be to send it to the bank and their normal operation is to come to the area to visit it, to look at the situation firsthand. Sometimes they have some comments and we would address those. And then ultimately, it would be brought before the full bank board, and the county would make a formal presentation, and then they would deliberate and decide what to do. So that's a very quick overview, and I think we can address your individual comments.
So let me jump to the chase of what I was going to ask about, because like Mr. Johnson pointed out, there was kind of that assumption mentality when it was Celanese Road that it was A, B, and C, but it's not really A and B, which is the Cherry Road area.
Yes, sir.
You look at projected growth, you got the Riverwalk, who I would guess, Chad, do you know the numbers on employment? But I would think it's up around 9,000 or somewhere up in that direction.
Could very well be, yeah.
And you got 10 times the traffic problem as you do on Sutton Road. 10 times the traffic situation. So, and I talked to somebody that's probably going to sit on the SIB that was perplexed by what the city of Rock Hill brought forth, saying, well, common sense says Sutton Road shouldn't have been there. It should have been, without forming a conclusion, but just looking at the overview, common sense said maybe that should have been A and B and not Sutton Road, and just have the whole A, B, and C. So with that general statement, can you help me understand better the object of Sutton Road over A and B?
Well, the traffic analysis that was done showed basically that the C was the biggest problem, and that A and B, while there was significant traffic, the backups weren't that great at this point in time. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that we could get the DOT to be happy, and they're going to look at traffic and congestion. And so it was a decision to propose this, and I guess up until the last couple of days, I wasn't aware that there was a problem, but I'm very aware of it right now.
Well, the city definitely brought it to our attention last week, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't realize this. And obviously, there could have been maybe better communication. I mean, I sit on RFATs too.
But I think it's also important to make sure everybody's satisfied. And and the other thing I would say is that if something is in the application, it has a better chance of being funded in the future than if it's not in the application. And we can probably not going to get $138, $140 million, whatever the request is going to be, but we'll get some portion. But as time goes on, and if the bank continues to be in place, and if they continue to find funding mechanisms to increase its bonding capacity, then having something in there would put the county in a better situation. So I'd suggest to Mr. Shanahan this morning that, we could do two things. One would be, let's say that we're looking at A and B further, that it's very important to the community to be to address all the issues in there and come up with an alternative that might be funded, and come to them with an amendment. That's kind of a half a loaf. The other alternative, I talked to Mr. Shanahan earlier this evening, and there were some questions. That number for Carowinds Boulevard is very big. And one of the reasons it's so big is that the engineering folks looked at it, how long it would take to develop that project, and estimated at 10 years with a 5% inflation factor. So that's double the original construction cost that we would get today. So I suggested, let's not do 10 years. I mean, for heaven's sake, let's get some folks who can get it done. And if we can take it down to 8 years or 7 years, we can pull enough money out of that, close to enough money out of that, to add A and B, and to put it in the application right now. And, I think it'll take a couple of weeks to do. I've got them working on some numbers right now and come up with something that will address all the concerns. And frankly, you have to remember, this is not a final design. All we have here is some very conceptual stuff that people do, and we have to go through a lot of steps. We have to make the Federal Highway Administration happy by justifying a new interchange or any modification to an interchange. There has to be environmental documentation that has to be done. And then there has to be all the public input that is necessary on every project. So a lot of things can happen, a lot of things can change. And the wisest thing to do is to get things in there with our best guess right now and see what happens and move forward. So I think there's an opportunity for us to do that if that is the will of the council here.
And I think there's certainly the money issue. I understand that. I mean, I pushed hard always do, for the Dave Lyle Boulevard extension, because to me, that's a southern bypass that'll take care of the load and divert it to get around. But the money costs, the bridge and everything, and it might mess up SIB by just shocking them in the factor. I said, well, I understand, we back off of that. The A and B Chair Road thing is the one that I have a lot of heartburn with.
And we've got to have the county and all the communities behind it. And that's going to be very important to getting it through the system.
Yeah, I like your second option because it addresses B and C, and it also gets that number down and gets it done quicker, which is what we keep trying to talk about.
That's right.
Getting jobs done quicker. And I'm still curious what we're doing up there, and I think I got an idea of what. Okay.
So.
Yeah, that was my guess. We are a lot of it's going to be right away.
It's serving that traffic going up that way.
Right.
Well, you have a Cracker Barrel there.
Well,
right in the driveway.
Those will be around after a nuclear explosion.
But that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen for sure. But that's the concept that the numbers were based on. And I've got this Gold Hill you've probably seen before, with this diverging diamond here. 160, same thing.
Yeah, that's where we're feeling a little bit.
This is what they've come up with for Sutton Road, which is interesting.
MGT hadn't mixed in somehow or another here, have they?
And then there's another, there's another one. We've already, Michael and I are getting flack for the traffic circle that's already there, and now you're gonna put 2 more in there, so.
I told them I think we need to talk about this some more. But I mean, it gives them a number to
Imagine a world in which there are 3 traffic signals within 200 yards on Sutton Road. I have to be very honest.
But the other logic was, if you're going to do some of them, and we're talking about the I-77 corridor, we really need to address the whole corridor, and that's another reason. Sutton Road was the last one that got in the game, I think.
And what brought Sutton Road into it again?
I'm sorry?
What brought Sutton Road into it again? Because it originally was not part of the equation.
It wasn't. It was the analysis that the
I think
traffic
that's
folks.
exactly what brought it.
Who did the analysis?
STV firm.
Who did it?
STV is the firm that is doing the engineering and the traffic.
And again, it was all based on new positions. You know, when we spoke to the folks that up in the state at the beginning, they said it's new economic development. I mean, I can't remember the name of the person that did it, but I had one of the folks tell me, I don't care how long the traffic jam is. It's not about a traffic jam. It's about new jobs. So that's what we base that on, new jobs.
Well, and it could be that same thing, this thing's, it's turned sideways, basically. North is this way. So, and A and B is down here. So it might be that something very similar to this could be developed for A and B too. And so that's about a $20 million price tag, round numbers. So,
I don't want to misunderstand you. Were you saying if A and B is included, that would be about, is that what you just said?
be another $20 million.
He says he thinks he can get that by reducing the construction time of Carowinds.
Carowinds.
Boulevard.
No, it might be, you know, we're
And
talking
Sutton
about,
Road was
Yeah.
13
I think so, yeah.
with all the whoop, 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 whoop stuff. I didn't follow it all, but,
Well, bridges
Whoops,
are,
traffic circles, thing.
whatever.
well, and it might be a little more than 138, but 138, 145, I don't think that's enough to make it's a deal killer. It's in the same ballpark, so.
I think if we can shorten the time frame at Carowinds Boulevard, add the other two, and only take a couple more weeks to get it down there, I'm all for it.
As long as we get it in by April, right?
Yeah.
What is this, March? Yes.
Does
Well,
the
and
delay
we'll know
pose
more
a problem?
tomorrow.
Did you
I
address
would be
it?
not
No,
totally
not-
frank with you.
certainly
Things
not.
could
2
change
weeks would
significantly.
not.
Well, the legislature possibly totally doing away with the SIP. I mean, their proposal was to change who sat on it. You have to go through the Senate for approval on these things, which seems to me to even favor our friends at the coast even more than they already have it good with the SIP. I mean, because we all know that the Senate, the coast is running the Senate. So what are, I mean, realistically, I mean, do we help ourselves? Because what we need to do is focus on putting forth a plan that gets money out of the SIP more than anything else. So I guess the question is, if we go back and we add A and B to exit 82, are we decreasing the likelihood because of the lack of jobs that are attached to A and B?
I don't think so.
Okay, well,
I
you
really
don't,
don't.
so that answers my.
You know, I think what's, and even Mr. Davis, I was listening to, Senator Davis, when I was listening to the debate the other day, he said, SIB should not build new roads, they should fix what we have first, right? That's what we've heard, and that's where the legislature appears to be coming from. But even in one of his comments, he said, I count, you have to go back into the recording, but I count upgrading an interchange on the interstate as taking care of things first. So,
Good.
you know, and I thought that was very positive. And that, you know, we're not talking about a new road like Dave Lyle. We're talking about taking care of economic development and taking care of the interstates, which is basically our main streets to our commerce, in my opinion. I still think that we'll be in good shape in competing with others.
Well, I think hearing everybody saying, I mean, take Sutton Road off, take some off the Carowinds, and you make it even less money than you're asking right now or came up with, so.
Sutton's got all the jobs.
Well, that's
When
one
I do hope
question.
that we can come up with a better plan.
Design.
Better design for Sutton by the time we get there.
Yeah,
think that message-
I'd get dizzy. But any other questions?
Well, this is just more of a practical question, it's probably not for you as much as to our own engineering staff. When I hear 10 years to build a road at Carowinds Boulevard. I mean,
Ridiculous.
Do we have any belief that that road will not be obsolete upon completion? I mean, day one, we'll have spent 168 million and we'll have an obsolete road that can't handle the traffic count?
We'll
I
have
mean-
hover cars by then.
I mean, it just seems to me, I mean, as I sit here, best case scenario, 2027 to open a road. There's no way that road can handle the traffic count. I mean, and I know maybe that's not something we should be talking about, but it bothers me to think we're about to spend 168 million and the roads will most likely be obsolete the day I open them.
Well, obviously, you got a tough job here, but it sounds like you got it about 80, 90% finished, so we'll see what you come up with.
Well, we'll go take a look at Carowinds, try to squash it down and get the numbers down. I'll certainly give them the message to take a hard look at Sutton Road and the roundabouts. But as I say, you know, if it's 140, so if you over that, you know, I don't think that's a big difference.
Okay.
We'll go back and do it.
Sounds.
Sorry
sounds-
that there was this misunderstanding.
Well, I'm glad that we got the letter Thursday or Friday, and y'all had time to talk and maybe come up with a plan, so us getting it at 3 o'clock today, and
We actually did a lot of 12-inch float on the weekend.
I can imagine.
Good.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So, next item, do we have a motion on consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Committee reports. First committee is Chairman Robert Winkler, Planning and Economic Development.
Thank you. Planning and Economic Development met today at noon, and we talked about, well, we've talked about quite a bit, the lack of inventory that we have in this county as far as acreage for development. And we looked at.
You mean with water sewer infrastructure tied in already? Is that what you're saying?
Just
Even
zoned industrial
zoning
that's
and-
ready to go.
In general?
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
Collected together.
And we looked at a lot of examples from other counties and how they address that and what they've done. And so we asked staff to come back to council with some recommendations for how we address it here, as far as funding, what, you know, whether it means, some counties have, you know, looked at buying land, some counties have done partnerships, but we said, basically, let's quit talking about it and let's put something in place and bring it before council so that we can address it as a council and move forward.
How about the integration with the comprehensive land use plan being finalized now?
And that's part of where they were looking at it, but it's, you know, when they identified that we have 49 acres right now in the county that is ready with the infrastructure and everything that's not already spoken for, or, you know, that 49 and a half acres.
That's it?
That has all the infrastructure and everything that's needed to go. And certified and ready.
Although with the FPO, it doesn't matter anymore.
So we asked to quit talking about it and move forward and bring something to council we can vote on.
Thank you, sir. Next committee is Chairwoman Christy Cox, Pennies for Progress.
The committee met today at 4 o'clock, and we got the update from staff regarding the pending projects. We also received some feedback from the Ad hoc Citizen Committee regarding a preliminary review and audit of 4 to 6 of the major projects that are being done. We anticipate that the results of that audit will come at the end of this month, 1st of April. We also had some discussion about the maintenance component to the Pennies program, but it was an ongoing discussion, not anything to report at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next committee is Chairman Michael Johnson, Finance and Operations.
My only regret today is that I was not a member of the Pennies Committee, so I could
That's
attend
right.
4 meetings today as opposed to just 3. At Finance and Operations, we approved Ashley Britton for the Catawba Mental Health Board.
What district?
Really?
5.
District 2.
Thank you.
No, that's fine.
No, excuse me, Bethel Fire District, we approved Ed Lindsay, District 2. Slow down as I'm scrolling. David Beatty for the Economic Development Board for the manufacturing position. Thomas Templeton for the Board of Assessment Appeals for District 2.
Wait a minute now. Tom Templeton's District 6.
Yeah, it's District 6.
That was my district that was up.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was.
Yeah, you told me
in the
I
wrong
had been on
spot.
District 6, so that's the man I picked to fill it for me.
Then we approved him for District 6.
That's right. That's what I remembered it was.
We'll have a little
It's just
clarification.
written wrong.
Okay.
And Billy Hare for the Bethesda Fire Tax District for District 4. And that was, we also met on a series of ethics issues. And Michael, do you have that sheet of paper I gave you by any chance? I gave away my cheat sheet. Councilwoman Cox had proposed a series of ethics reforms as it related to our boards and commissions, and we approved the following. we approved that the council would make decisions regarding ethics issues with board members and committees, and that we would be the body that heard them. We also asked that Mr. Kendry draft an ordinance that would allow him to temporarily remove someone from a board or commission if he felt an issue had arisen, and that kind of suspension would happen between the time period of that meeting and the first time the full council could hear it. This will not be something that will be sent to a committee. This will come to the full council immediately to determine whether or not a real conflict of interest existed. We also are going to require that all board members annually disclose employer, spouse's employer, all companies, LLCs of which they or their spouse are a member, and identify all other public boards they or their spouse or members of their immediate household are members. We're going to we approve the disqualification of individuals from serving on boards if they or a company which they were a member, officer, shareholder, stakeholder, or of which they have direct or indirect financial interest, have failed to honor contracts with the county or otherwise required the county to expend taxpayer dollars to complete contractual obligations that were their responsibility. And we're also passed out that the council will before we hear or use any studies as part of our deliberations, all stakeholders who finance that study will disclose it. We've also asked Mr. Kendry to give us a better definition so that the people who serve on our boards and commissions will understand what is a conflict of interest. That was everything that Ms. Cox had recommended except for the Citizens Ethics Committee, and we believed that the council would be a better group to make those determinations rather than unelected citizens. Let me pass that back. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Sounds like a great idea.
Okay, because it was Mr. Martinson that you said it expired, so. Okay, so it is 6, right? Okay, good. So you were correct, it was a printing error.
I think it was in the right spot.
Okay. So the next is council member non-agenda comments. Any new? Mr. Henderson, I think I see that's the only hand that was up.
Yes, I would like council, if you would, consider all the folks that were speaking tonight concerning their opposition to a moratorium and all their concerns about folks how much of this bringing everything to a screeching halt would interfere adversely toward many people. And I'm trying to be as compromising as I can, and I think a good compromise would be some of the following, rather than an all-out moratorium based upon over a year now of absolute problems, one problem after another.
And Bruce, I'm going to give you some leeway here
Yes,
because this is supposed to be new items, but we really didn't address a freeze moratorium today, so I guess we could say that was under that category, but try to kind of keep it short and to the point so we don't stretch it too far there.
Well, I'm just going to ask that the council would please consider for the next council meeting, and Ms. Miller is aware of quite a bit of my concerns. If you would consider in RD and RC zoning that, and within at least a half mile from the lake, that there would not be any multi-level, multifamily, or hotels to preserve the lake, safety, mass runoff, and all those type things, and lessening the density, lessening stress on infrastructure and so forth. So I ask that you would consider that as a compromise, as well as a compromise concerning RD and RC permitting reductions rather than an all-out moratorium, to where you could have the mass development to where permitting would be allowed to slow down and let us catch up on things. This would be a natural way for it to happen without stopping growth in its tracks, to where you can have at least 30 to 40 lots per parcel of development area, where 30 or 40 lots could be developed, or up to 25% of that parcel of land, whichever comes first, within 6 months or a year, whichever. I'd even consider the 6 months. But it would certainly slow down things to where we can get a handle on this, because if we don't get a handle on it, it's just going to continue to get worse and worse. And I think that would naturally regulate itself without very much more, a minimal amount of government intrusion rather than all-out moratorium or just a standstill. So please consider that.
And Audra, like you don't have enough to do, if you could maybe get with Mr. Henderson and just kind of formalize what he's talking about, and maybe you could send a copy to all the council members to see his proposal or whatever. Any other comments from new, non-agenda? There being none, do we have a motion on executive session?
Move we go into executive session to receive legal advice regarding the landfill matter and receive an update on the administrative law court appeal and the personnel matter involving the DNA analyst and the DNA technical leader. Any of the rest of them?
Is that good enough, Michael?
Is it just those two, or we need to talk about?
You want two positions?
Just the,
My DNA people.
yeah,
Okay.
DNA analyst and DNA, okay.
Okay, so do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We'll be back in executive session in 10 minutes, 20 to 10.